G'day, folks. AoS coach here, wearing my wonderful little mushroom hat. I've been waiting to wear this for ages. It's I saw it at Hot Topic for those people. Complete side random conversation that we're getting into. By the way, we're talking Gitz. We're talking Gitz before I go into my random tangent that when I was in Hot Topic, I saw this mushroom hat and mushroom socks and got super inspired by a player that I met at the World Championships last year. And I'm like, I need to get myself some Gitz gear. So I'm finally wearing my mushroom hat, and I thought it was a great opportunity to then also might as well talk to somebody about Gitz. It is Michael Rausch, who is the Squig Whisperer, coming to us from High Ground Gaming. Michael, top performing Gitz player, number 1 on the ITC right now, currently 3rd overall, just behind Gavin Grigger and Tom Guan overall. So not only a great, big names, and you are etched onto the, I don't know, the, what do you call that? You know, your rocks with all your faces on it.
The Mount Rushmore.
That's it. You are on the Mount Rushmore of Sigmar players this year. And Michael recently went 5-0 at South Bend GT. So what better way to wear a lovely hat, but also talk about Gitz? Michael, g'day, welcome.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me on. I like some funny little goblin men, and I like Warhammer. It's very convenient. We can do all this talking all at once.
Mate, that was the most random start to an episode.
Yeah, no, it's totally natural. It's fine.
It's Sunday. I've been on my resin printer. I'm probably high on resin fumes, but that probably works nicely to the way Gitz operate and eating those death shrooms and tapping into the magic.
If my goblins aren't high on shrooms, they're doing it wrong. It's the only way to play.
Are you really, like, how do you be a fanatic without that type of, anyway, probably approaching territory where YouTube might flag me. Michael, how's Gitz going? How have you enjoyed Gitz in 4th edition? What is the 411?
So in Gitz, I find they're actually quite good. They're, like, power-wise, if you're comparing them to all their armies, they're quite powerful. They have good tools that they can use to play games and keep games close, very consistent. If you're able to build the list correctly, which tends to be a lot of the problems. And their internal balance, I find, is usually a little off parity for what it probably should be. But, like, overall, as a state of the meta health, they're actually probably quite healthy for an army.
Yeah, when you look at the win rates, they're actually doing very well. I think parts of it, we were talking about it offline, having a laugh. When 4th edition very first came out, the list that came out of the blocks was Trogs. Trogs were really powerful. Also kept it really simple for us to learn the new edition. So, the last thing you want, like, I'm a Moon Clan player. I love my Moon Clan. And there's so much intricacies when it comes to Moon Clan and buff ranges, and it's very, very complex at times to build a really cool Moon Clan list. But then when you add the layers of 4th edition, it becomes quite hard. So I can understand why people started a lot with Trogs, and you're starting to see the momentum shift. The rules have adjusted, points are adjusting, and you're no longer just seeing Trog lists, which is really exciting, or at least what I'm seeing.
I personally love a mixed field army with it. So, like, even though, like, I took just last weekend, like, it wasn't just 18 rock guts, which is, like, the standard. Whenever you're able to take bits and pieces from different allegiances, like even different separations of Gitz, and put them together and have them fielded in one force, it actually makes them feel like you're using the most of the book. However, you are slightly hamstrung in the way that the list builds due to most of your sub factions, but I find them quite fun.
Yeah, you're definitely seeing the mixed lists a bit more. I've always had the philosophy of, like, a 60-40 or a 70-20. So 70-30, sorry, maths Sunday.
Math's hard.
That's a Monday problem where you always want to have that dominant look, half of my army or a good chunk of my army is in Trog or Gitz or Spiders or whatever. And obviously, and then kind of build around it. And even, like, I'm seeing a lot of 2-drop regiments right now. It's like, right, one regiment is Trogs, one regiment is Squigs or Moon Clan or Spiders. And that regiment system's actually really worked really nicely to kind of create that separation.
Yeah, I've kind of found the same thing. Unless you're able to take one little goblin who will let you take whatever you want, you are very much forced down to like a two split style army, which is like a 4th edition kind of issue. Like the regiments force you to build paths. But otherwise, like you got like one guy who just says take whatever you want. So it kind of skews your list building, which I do kind of find nice at times.
So overall, 4th edition has been kind for Gitz. You know, it's good time for Gitz. I'm hearing it's not just about Trogs, and that's not saying Trogs is bad, folks. Trogs is very
Trogs
good.
are great.
They are very good. But the nerfs and the adjustments are starting to catch up slowly. So maybe if you don't own all the rock guts, maybe don't go out and spend your Christmas dollars getting 18 rock guts just yet.
Just hang back at 12. That's all you need. Just 12.
But how, like from a 4th edition perspective, how have you found the rules in, you know, obviously battle tactics, general's handbook, objectives, sizes? That's obviously a really big one for us because, again, as a Moon Clan player, I can stop you from getting on an objective. The amount of 40 block idiots that are just sitting on an objective. But then, you know, like there's so many little things like power through and you know, casting in your opponent's turn. What have you found from a Gitz perspective?
So for Gitz specifically, I find that the objectives being generally smaller is actually one of the best things that you can do, especially if you're not playing Trogs. But even if you are, like having an objective that is only such a big space that you're able to zone out with even just so few guys to be able to have you control points, I found to be really nice. When the rules initially dropped, I played mostly Gitz myself. So I was playing 80 Stabas is what I played at Adepticon and 5-0'd with months ago now. But like when they changed it from 3rd to 4th, like I felt like they ripped out a lot of what made the army function. But with points changes and like little increments on hitting Trogs and making other stuff slightly better, I found other tools that I can still use my Goblin pieces for to kind of reknit how I put my army together, more mixed arms than I did previously in 3rd edition.
I guess, you know, I was thinking about like the Trogs, for example. It's easy for you to be able to sit on an objective, and in the old 3rd edition, you could not engage. Like, you know, they didn't count as many on an objective, especially the 3-man Trogs, and you could sneak and steal an objective off them. But now you've got to be in combat range basically, so it plays really nicely. Probably the biggest impact negatively for me has been the loss of double reinforcements and the loss of obviously extra enhancements, because you've only got one idiot that can have, I mean, obviously, you know, it doesn't have to be general now, so there's a lot of flexibility, but I used to love having one block of 60 stabbers that just absolutely was that brick that you just couldn't move, and then the rest kind of worked around it.
Yeah, I think the biggest hits were honestly from going to their PDF. Like I think like their spells netters, RAP netters. They were so good for so long. Now you have to like roll dice to make them work against like specific units. So like a lot of their war scrolls, I do feel like did get a downgrade. But like that's kind of like a thing they did for destruction. So it's kind of like a destruction problem where they made all of your profiles generically worse than what they were before. But like in doing so, most people kind of got worse, so it made them a little bit better. But they did gain a little bit of reliability in the Loon Shrine, which I actually kind of really liked, because instead of like I have to now roll a 4+ to maybe get a unit back, I'm able to get additional reliability by just spending a command point to return units. So additional reliability is always something you want, especially if you're trying to run to a GT and play the best you can. Just knowing you can do things, like I get to do this 100% of the time, is really nice to just have sitting in your back pocket, knowing, oh, you killed these, 6 trolls that I put up in the early game. You killed them. They did whatever. They stood there for a while. But I guarantee I can bring them back. So extra reliability is always something that I really appreciate in my games.
That's a good call out, because I almost never got them back. Like the amount of times I failed that 4-up, and then I would go to the sub faction where you get to roll it twice. Like you used to get two chances. I'm like, I never used to get them back. Like I just assumed that they weren't ever coming back. If they did, it was a bonus.
For sure. For sure.
Oh my gosh. Taking me back. But like what the one thing with Gitz with the terrain feature, it's one of the most impactful terrain features. And as soon as people see it on the table, they want to take it out.
They want
Like
it gone.
I like, I've been talking to a few other factions of late where they have a terrain feature, and like you see the Seraphon Pyramid, you're like, yeah. You see the Slaves to Darkness Nexus, you're like, yeah. But you see that Loon Shrine on the board, get rid of it ASAP. So how have you found that from like, are people targeting it? Are you spending more time protecting it? Now you've got that guarantee bringing it back. And now that, they've got a damage profile and, all of that stuff. Are you finding that you've got to spend time protecting it, thinking about defending it more than you did in the past?
So I find it's about the same, because before people would still just take monsters, try to run it over and, smash it with like the monstrous rampage that was to destroy terrain. So you're already kind of playing a castle around it. And you already wanted to be around it because that gave you the moon before. So you're already really wanting that buff. So all that really changed is now I have to just try to protect it from getting shot, which is way harder to protect it from getting shot at versus a monster has to walk up within 3. That said, I actually played a Gitz Mirror last weekend, and my priority was I'm going to shoot their Loon Shrine before they can take down mine. And I did. I moved up. I took out their Loon Shrine. I'm like, all right, I'm the step up above them because I have a guaranteed unit return, guaranteed moon, and you don't. So just by taking even little steps like that, like I will prioritize removing your unit recursion and kind of your allegiance abilities. So if I lose one unit, that's fine because you've now lost a fully functioning army. It's still quite impactful and very worth protecting at all times.
Yeah. Despite the lack of smash to rubble, you've got to protect this thing. That this is so crucial to your army. Just a shame I can't put Scrag on it anymore. I used to love putting Scrag on.
Yeah,
I used to love hiding Scrag. I was going to build another one with a little space that I could hide him and like
give him a little door so that there's a little cave on the front. You put a little door there. You open up the door. You just put him inside and just close it.
And use his little wand. Before I bring up the rules, and I do want to bring up the rules in a minute. Do you have any favorite units in the Gitz book right now? Whether it was either a strong unit in the 3rd edition that's still strong, or one that maybe wasn't as popular in the old edition that now has gotten a glow up?
Okay, so I have an answer for each. So my previous edition love, and still probably my favorite unit, just like conceptually in the way that they work, and they're still pretty good now, is Sneaky Snufflers. They're a bunch of little idiots that give you really good bonuses. So they're basically the same. They give you 5-up wards, and they can give you extra attacks to your guys. And they do the exact same thing now. And weirdly, whenever you need them to kill a 5-wound foot wizard, attacking them with 36 attacks randomly works because they just weirdly have 5 attacks a model. And they will just run at you and accidentally kill you when you're not expecting it. So they're my favorite holdover unit. And I love their models. They are probably my favorite Gitz unit if I had to pick like a single one in the entire book. And I think the glow up unit from last edition to this edition, especially with the points decreases to the point where we're at now, is the Moon Clan Chudas. I think are one of the hotter units in the book now. They're not the strongest shooting in the game, but they are very consistent at what they do, and they whittle your opponent down army, and they give you a tool that nothing else in your book can give you. I'll talk more about them later when we get to lists, but I think they're one of our big glow ups.
The other one I'd call out is the rise of Trog, the Trog King. The model came out. It was a beautiful model. And then people were like, I don't like the randomness. I don't like the rules. Like 3rd edition, he never really took off unless you did the Trog herd. I'm feeling like you're seeing it more and more now, which is a good thing. Yeah. Because it's a good model.
He's gorgeous. I don't personally own one because I'm not a full Trog player, but I've looked at him. I've eyed him from across the room lovingly.
Yeah, the other unit that I've got, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on, because I've seen it pop up a few times, and I love that Spider Riders are popping up more. That's not what I'm going to ask you about. It's those not the Wolf Riders, the
Snarlfang Riders.
The Snarlfang Riders. I'm seeing them pop up more and more, and I'm like, what are you crazy kids doing with this? Because back in the day, Ripper Snarlfang, 70 points, little objective stealer, happy days. This unit's a little different, a little more expensive, but I'm seeing it pop up more and more. So maybe you got the secret sauce.
So they were also in my GT list from last weekend. They are relatively cheap. Nobody wants to kill them, and they give you a free D6 move every time every opponent's movement phase. So anytime you can get additional free movement, it's always good. So they have bows that do whatever damage, like they're goblin bows. They miss, they do a damage. You're happy.
4s and 5s.
Yeah, like it's not good. But like sometimes it'll do 1 damage and it matters. But other times, like they have the wolves, which are like 10 attacks, 4s and 3s, no rend, but 2 damage. They can randomly outfight chaff. But like if you need a unit to zip across the board and take like an opponent's backfield objective, take your opponent's land, getting a free D6 move that you can compile with redeploy for 2d6 movement during your opponent's turn to then in your turn move another 12 inches. Like these guys can really zip it across the battlefield to be where your opponent doesn't need them, or at the very least, they're a free redeploy to shut like a gap. If you have like a line of trolls and you're trying to screen out, maybe your Loon Shrine that we're trying to protect, and there's like, a 4-inch gap between them, you take that free D6 move, you shut the gap, so now your opponent can't charge through it and go punch something that you care about, because free movement is always good, and movement is the winner of games.
Yeah, you can block like a counter charge. You can get into the back. Like, yeah, okay, all right. I mean, 130 points. Anyway, we're getting into the weeds here. It's just a unit I've seen popping up more and more. Like nobody was running the Snarlfang in the past. So
I did.
It was all right.
They were great. They were great back then. They're great now.
Yeah. You might be one of the few. I'm going to get onto Discord and people are going to slam me on it. But
for sure. They can all be wrong. That's okay.
No, they slam me.
Sorry. They can blame me.
Yeah. All right. I'm bringing up the rules. now because I want your opinion. All right. Let's talk. So first and foremost, we have the Bad Moon. Actually, before we get into this, what do you use for a Bad Moon token?
It depends. Sometimes I'll just write it down because I use pen and paper to like track score. But I went to Nova and LVO and the World Championships, and they give you like these like nice little coins. So sometimes I'll just place that in the table corner and be like, my moon's there. And they'll just be like, okay. And I'll just slowly move it across the battlefield. It's a nice little circular token that marks what quadrant we're in.
I use the Blood Bowl token. There's a little Bad Moon Blood Bowl token. And then I just move that around. That's nice. My little thing. Anyway, the Gitz players probably know these rules, so we won't read out story time with coach and all of the things. But how do you think about the Bad Moon and in regards to, I guess, its placement when you're thinking about, list construction, are there particular things that you want to be accessing and like, how do you unpack it? Because we've talked a little bit about the benefits of a soupy combination style, not all trogs or all squigs, but I've got a lot of choices here. I've got Moon Clan, I've got squigs, I've got trogloths, I have spiders. How do you think about this?
So I'll start with deploying it. That's the easier part. Whenever I'm deploying my army, I also think about this when I'm deploying my Loon Shrine, is where do I want the Bad Moon to be and where do I want to affect it? Since I'm deploying it in a quarter, let's say we're playing on like a long battlefield edge where you're deploying normally 13 inches up, I'm usually putting my Loon Shrine on either the right or left side to give myself half the board coverage, and I can kind of determine where my units can return and where my Bad Moon reaches, usually within 12 of the center, so I can seize the center as a potential tactic option. And I usually put my Bad Moon in the other corner, so I'm able to zone my side, my half of the table, wherever I reliably need it. And if you're looking at the Bad Moon abilities, like there's one of these that is just completely stand out. +1 save is one of the best abilities you can ever get in the game. So being able to save stack with trolls, who are the standout unit, I'm usually caring about the moon to save my trolls, and anything else I can get on this list is just gravy on top of what I'm already wanting to do. So like if I can get my trolls +1 save, golden. But if I can randomly have my Moon Clan units +3, it doesn't matter a lot. But if you pick 2 foot heroes and all of a sudden 2 foot heroes are counting as 10, then it becomes relevant, but it's nothing I look to rely on when using.
Yeah, when I look at these rules, Spider Fang Venom is one that doesn't appeal to me. Like, it's not like that particular rule is going to get me to make sure that I put in a unit of Spider Fang. If I happen to find them, cool. If I want Spider Riders or some type of big arachnoid, that's not a word. Arachnorock. If I'm gonna put it in the list, this is bonus, but it's not like this is a really cool rule that I'm gonna have to force it in. Your Trog list, to your point, super great. The +1 to save is so beneficial, especially when you combine it with healing, when you combine it with all out defense, or not even having to spend a command point to use all out defense. Like, that is just, and that's why the Trogs have been so strong. The Squigs, I can't stress enough as a Squig player how impactful re-rolling those random characteristics are, because they can be punishing. What?
So I'm going to take a gripe at this. This is
All
one
right.
of the things that made me the most sad. You remember third edition when that used to be run in charge?
It did, yes.
Like, that was so much better than re-rolling random. So I will take any sort of movement help I can get. But 2d6 is just always faster than d6. Any day of the week. So I kind of have a gripe with it. Like, it's good. It's a decent ability. It's just painful. It's when you're comparing it to the shadow of its past.
Yes. Yeah, look, I'm not someone who used to rely that much on the run and charge back in the day, because I never really went hard turn one with the Squigs. I'd always wait for the bad mood to get closer into the middle, then launch. And by that stage, I didn't need the run and charge. But I absolutely agree with you. I see where you're coming from. It does stop you from having that ultimate turn one go into your face and slingshot. You know, you've used your Squig boss to kind of buff them up, go off and be free.
Yeah.
But that isn't as impactful to me, because I always held them back a little bit, like turn two. I played them like I do with my Daughters of Cain. Like, I never go turn one. I always hold them back for turn two and wait for that blood right to go up just a little bit, then go.
Oh, sometimes it's not even the fact that you do so. It's just having the potential to do so. So, like, I think it's objectively correct. You almost never want to just full send at someone, like you said. Like, I think that's generally a good call. It's just not having the availability to do so is what makes me sad.
Agreed. But I don't think it's a change enough that makes them not a good unit anymore.
No, they're still a great unit.
But if you ask me, like, I have a choice, I get this or this, yeah, I'm clearly taking the run and charge, like having more options. And there's been times where, you know, the opponent, or there's a backfield objective that the run and charge has gotten me in. I get it. But it's not here. So let's not gripe on it.
I know.
Let's not worry about
Reminiscing. It's okay.
But Lunar Squig, good rule. If you're enticed on, you know, the hoppers with their crazy high movement, or, you know, getting those Boingrots into combat, obviously Squig Herd, great. The Frothing Zealots is an interesting rule. Like, I don't think that rule alone is enough for you to go out and go hunting for your Moon Clan units, your non-Squig Moon Clan units. But it's one that you appreciate when you've got them. Like, whether you've got a unit of stabbers or shooters in your backfield, whether you are trying to contest something, that'll come into play. It's not a strong enough rule that I take a unit because of that rule, but I always find use for it when I've got it.
Objective control score is never a bad thing to have. It's free when you're already taking it. Great. If you're not taking it, you're not going to put something in just for it, like you said.
Yeah, and, like, you know, especially like if you've got a non-reinforced unit of stabbers or shooters, right? 20 people in the block, you start taking some damage, and they do die pretty quickly, especially with the changes to the netters. That can be the difference of retaining and losing an objective.
Yep. And that can sometimes be enough to swing a game, and that's what we're looking for.
Anything else you'd call out on this particular slide? Like, it's just pretty static, right? Like, I think everyone in their mind has an idea of the types of units they want to include, and the randomness of the bad moon means that you don't always rely on it. It's a boost. And if you want that reliability, you've got to go the endless spell, your point, have the terrain and the spot on the table.
Yeah, that seems like the Gitz allegiance abilities, random and yet sometimes powerful.
At least it doesn't start off the bottom back of the board like it used to
true.
in second.
That's true.
I was there. I was there. I was there. Where do you stand with battle formations? Are these all equal,
No.
or do you think? Yeah, that was a trick question.
There is only two that you should probably be realistically considering. So Trogherd and the Squigalanche are by far the two more powerful ones of the two. The MoonClan Scrap you might think is good until you read what it actually says. So the pile-in and the free D3, if you're bringing hordes of goblins, you're like, oh, that's really great. I can do that every turn. But they wrote it's only your turn. So that already takes away the effectiveness because Grots generically are not overwhelmingly powerful. 4s and 5s, like their attacks aren't very good. So like the extra D3 at the end of turns, especially if you could stack it, would like greatly appeal to me, but it doesn't overlap with units, which just means you kind of lean into your other two. So if you're playing Squigs or Trogs, usually you have something of this in either one. And if you're needing your Trogs to really just stay alive and be your front board healers, you're going to take that extra healing to try to have them just stay in front and keep fighting longer, because Trogs are already tough. Making them tougher is always good. And then you have kind of the reverse effect with the Squigs. So if you are needing a little bit more punch to punch through your opponent, take them off the board so you can, maintain board presence and slowly remove your opponent's army, you will take the Squigalanche to then get those extra attacks for your gobs. When you combine that with crit mortals, you can then start reliably lifting up your opponent's units. And the problem with the Spider Fang tribe is you're relying on spiders. So you kind of just don't take that one. Taking additional units in the webs below with the extra spiders doesn't really do a whole lot, just fundamentally. So it just kind of gets overlooked.
Yeah, and I was, I've got a bunch of questions that came from Discord, and Skaven Spawn, a big Gitz player, was saying, why does GW hate spiders? Is it arachnophobia? And after like multiple editions now, it's hard to defend it because they haven't really been good. There was one time where Spider Riders were OP because you could really bring down the mortal wound to 4s, maybe even 3s. It was a crazy time where you could just do an industrial amount of mortal damage through the Spider Riders. But it's been a couple of editions now where spiders as a faction haven't been good.
Mm-hmm.
Having an Arachnarok spider has been awesome. Having that web spinner shaman on a big spider got us through 3rd edition. That was a really beneficial unit in our game. But you don't, unless you are just committed to spiders, you just don't take them. Like it's just not a draw.
Like there's like 2 units and spiders that I think are okay, and I did put them in some lists for those people that are like, I want to really take my spiders. I'm like, all right, this is probably the best way to use them. But they kind of need a fundamental re-understanding of what they're going for. If you're wanting them to be crit mortals, they're coming in with these like fangs and poison. Like they need to actually have some oomph behind it for them to actually do anything. And if you look like an Arachnarok spider, like this thing's like a giant model. It's like one of it's like the second biggest thing you have in Gitz, and it's relatively large just comparison. And then he goes in and does less damage than like 2 Rockgut Trolls.
Yeah,
you kind of question what's going on there. That he's getting outperformed by just a couple guys, but it is what it is for them.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, they've still got some use for the spiders, and you can definitely include spiders in your list. But would I build a whole list around them? Not currently, not in the current form that they're in. It's an absolute shame that MoonClan Scrap, it's okay. Like, it's just okay. But then when I compare it to Squigalanche and Trogherd, that's just so much more useful, so much more beneficial. And for me, like the types of lists that I run is usually like Moon Clan and Squigs.
Mm-hmm.
So I will have the the offense of having maybe 1 or 2 units of reinforced Squig herd. I'll then have my Moon Clan stabbers or shooters, obviously Gobbapalooza, Snarlers, Snarlers, Sneaky Snufflers.
Mm-hmm.
You have your little combinations, and I'll go hard on the Squiggerlanche. And I was thinking while you were talking, what would it take me to go Moon Clan scrap? Because I've done it. Unless I went all Horde. If I just went, because I've got like 200 stabbers and 40 or 60 shooters. If I just went on the board and go, right, here's Scragrot with 200 stabbers. Just go. I don't care about Battle Shock anymore. Just go. Yeah, okay, Moon Clan scrap.
If it was both turns, I would consider it more, I think is my honest answer.
Why I'm saying that is because 200 stabbers doesn't benefit from anyone else.
Nope.
So it's like, so that's what I'm saying. Like, that's probably the only time. But anytime I've got a Mangler Squig, I've got, a bunch of Rock Guts, I've got anything else in my list, I'm probably going Squiggerlanche, I'm going Trog Herd is basically my point.
Yeah, it really is. I don't think they also understand what stabbers are doing for the army if that's what they're writing for their sub faction. It can be really cute if you're like running, let's say, those hordes of goblins and you're running nothing else. Like you can do the same mortal wounds onto one unit, so you just run a bunch of units of goblins, you pack them together, and you can pile in and do like 6 to 8 mortal wounds maybe, like with your end of turn pile-ins, but it's just not. It doesn't do enough when you're comparing it to +1 attack or extra healing. It's just not the same.
No, and it definitely, and like even like when I used to run my up to 200 idiots, the critical unit used to be the loon boss to give him mortals, right? Mortals on 6s, and then you use the fanatics, the spore spatter fanatics, even +1 attack. So now you've got 2 attack goblin idiots. Back in the day where you had spears, you could be fighting in 3 ranks, just generating an industrial amount of mortals.
Oh boy, do I have a list for you. You're going to love this.
Cool. I think we've made our point. Trog Herd, Squiggerlanche. Before I move on, Trog Herd versus the what's it called? The Army of Renown, the Trugs Trog Herd.
Yeah.
If you were going to run like an all Trog list, would you go Herd or would you go Trugs one?
I think I would stick with this one, just because it's guaranteed versus Trugs. You have to still do all that bonking on his stick to randomly still get effects. I think I would stick in the Gitz version, and it lets you have access to extra units, even if it's only 1 or 2 units of non-trolls. Let's say you're taking 24 Rock Guts, and you have a troll hero. I'd still probably lean into here because it just gives you a little bit of extra optionality that you can use.
Yeah, if you're going all Trogs, 100% Trogs, I think either or works. But the fact that you can do a Gobbapalooza, get yourself Scragrot, it's so restrictive that even just having one of them is really beneficial. So I can't imagine going into a world where I don't take the Gobbapalooza.
They're in every list.
Is that even possible? I feel like I get locked up and go to jail.
Yeah, and they're perfect models. I can't disagree with it. They're great.
It should be illegal. Anyone go to jail. What's your favorite hero trait and why?
Okay, so I like all 3 of them.
Agreed.
It depends how you're wanting it to be used. So I'll start with probably the one I'll take the least, which is Fight Another Day, because you only really want that. Okay, so it's really nice, except for when you fail the roll. There's just so many scenarios where it goes wrong. So Fight Another Day, while my favorite to use, it was my favorite in the last book. The fact is now a 3-up, not guaranteed, and you only really want to put this on a Mangler Squig and maybe a troll. You don't really have any other options you want to put it on. But if you get Turbo Squig running around the battlefield, you hit all of your 3-ups. It's really cool. But it's just not. I don't put a Mangler Squig in a lot of my lists anymore, just to his scroll. So Fight Another Day kind of slowly gets cut off, which is unfortunate. And then you kind of go back and forth between the Clammy Hand and Loon Touched, because you're usually running a bunch of foot goblins as your other heroes. So +1 to cast or an additional wizard, depending on how many wizard and cast I already have in the list, usually is what dictates if I'm taking this or Clammy Hand. So giving someone +1 to cast is nice. A lot of your spells are cast on 7s or worse. So sometimes 8 if you're taking, let's say Morbid or Craw Spine. So Loon Touch I will take occasionally if I need an extra cast or I want +1 to cast. But if I'm taking, say, Scragrot and Gobblepalooza, I'm already at 3 casts. I usually don't find myself looking for a 4th. So I'll lean Clammy Hand, because with the additional 3 dice to rally, it lets your Goblin Hordes come back really reliably. You're returning 5 into them instead of maybe 3. So those additional dice to help flood your unit is really nice. In addition, it gives you a chance to rally a troll if you're playing trolls. 9 dice looking for 4s. You got a 50-50 chance of just returning a whole troll to the unit, which sometimes, like, someone sees one troll come back, they just groan as they're like, oh crap, I have to kill another one of these guys, and that means they're out of combat and probably hunting you down somewhere. So yeah, usually it's list dependent, but I go back and forth between the Clammy Hand and Loon Touched.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Loon Touch would be more beneficial to me if this was like 3rd edition where we had 2 spell laws.
Yes.
And we had quite deep spell laws, but we don't have as many spells, and I don't want to cast as many endless spells. So as you said, Scragrot and Gobblepalooza, which are always in my list, is enough. And then if I have a Web Spinner or a Fungoid, I've already got the 4. But even then, like Gobblepalooza and Scraggy is usually enough. So I'd probably agree with you that the Clammy Hand is probably where I would go. And I agree with you as well on Fight Another Day. A lot of the fight that happens in my army is with units, not heroes. So my heroes are support pieces rather than leading pieces. Obviously, you go Kragnos, but he's unique. I don't need it. Yeah. If I get the Gargant, again, I don't need it. I don't need a Gargant. I can't give the Fight Another Day to a Gargant. So, like, unless it's like even the Dank holds, like if I was taking the Trog boss, like even like would I give it Fight Another Day? No, I'm probably giving Clammy Hand or Loon Touched. Like, yeah.
It's probably just the Mangler Squiggies who I'd give this to, because that man does die to a stiff breeze.
It does, but it's also on the 3 up, right, where everything else is guaranteed. So
and again, we like that reliability.
Yeah, it's the very little reliability we have in Gitz, we will hold it dearly.
Yes.
What about the artifacts? I think they are a little closer to even. Not saying that they are even, but I think there's use. Oh, Michael's going to disagree with me.
Yeah, there's one standout pick.
I'm going to hang your
really just one.
What is it?
It's the Clammy Cowl every day. What's worse, being alive or getting in combat and probably dying if I'm a little goblin? If I'm dying, I'd rather have a slight chance of not dying. I will say I've put the Backstabber's Blade on my Loon boss before in a GT, and I'm like, man, if this guy gets stuck in combat, maybe he's randomly fighting a hero, they'll forget he's there, and then on once per game do D6 mortals. He never made it to the end of a turn to use it. Not once. He sat there, was looking at him, he had a knife in his hands, and just fell over before he got to use it, which is sad.
All 3 of them are useful. The Clammy Cowl, I agree with you wholeheartedly. The Leering Git Shield, I think, has some play in certain builds. But again, it goes back to what I literally just said about my heroes. They're often support heroes. They're not going in. So do I want to rely on a once per battle, end of turn, 2 up, on an idiot? No. So yes, the Clammy Cowl absolutely stands out there. In the right situation, I think the Leering Git Shield has play. But yeah.
I think if hordes come back, because we play relatively elite Warhammer, but if we start seeing a thing where 100 dryads or 100 whatever, you just start seeing like zombies. Zombies was a menace in 3rd edition. I think Leering Git Shield starts to find a place if you start to see lots of hordes, or even if it's just local to you, you see lots of hordes. I think Glaring Gitz Shield does have a place. But if you want the thing that does it all the time and is always good, especially on like a Dank hold or even a little foot goblin that they're trying to randomly kill, the Clammy Cowl is always reliably doing its thing.
And like, what do you want to rely on? A bunch of an attack sequence and then a 1 on the hit roll, or do you want to just flat out across the board -1 to hit? And the fact that it works in both shooting and in combat, the fact that it forces your opponents to spend a command point if they really want to do damage, where the Glaring Gitz Shield doesn't force those decisions. So yeah, agreed. Just sad actually that we agree, because a really well written book, we should have a healthy debate going. I think this, I think that, but it's hard. It's hard for me to argue the Clammy Cowl, or even like it's hard for me to fight Another Day as like a really good choice. Like, unfortunately, these are the standouts. It depends on how you're building your list and what works a little better.
Yeah, that's something I'm hoping will improve as time goes on, as we start to see books develop. I'm hoping that's kind of an index thing and it gets better as the edition goes on.
Yeah, I'd love some more depth. I miss the depth. That's probably the one thing I really miss on Gitz, because I used to love like having 6 spells. I miss the Great Green Spite.
Oh, yes.
Man, that used to be my little power through. Like, we got these blocks of idiots, just mortals for days. The little zappy stick of Scraggy. Speaking of Scraggy, but also obviously our other spell friends, which spells do you use more often? I mean, you've talked Gobbapalooza. Are there particular synergies that you're like, right, Gobbapalooza always casts Sneaky Distraction, and Hand of Gork, I always use it for this reasons. Like, tell me how you play with the spell lore.
So Sneaky Distraction, actually, I do cast with Gobbapalooza the most. It is our most powerful spell that we have on this list.
Why?
Because it gives you the best thing. It keeps your stuff alive. -1 to hit is usually the best thing that you can ask of from these 3 spells that you can do reliably. Again, once you cast the spell, the effect just takes hold. I don't have to like set up and be restricted by movement by my opponent's units. Vicious Warmoth still has just a chance not to do anything. Sneaky Distraction does just work. However, it's slightly controlled by your opponent due to your opponent have to getting wholly within 12. But like, you don't want to put like a little foot wizard like a Fungoid Cave Shaman forward. Putting for the Gobbapalooza, they're 15 wounds. They have a ward save. And if it's early in the tame, it's a 4-up ward save. So be able to just put that unit forward and not take much repercussions back. I think Sneaky Distraction is like a standout spell that used to be on their War Scroll, but now that everyone has access to, it's probably our best spell from the lore.
One more thing to add to that: footprint size. That's the difference. Like, your Fungoid Cave Shaman and Scragrot couldn't cast this spell. But the difference as well, on top of what you said around the ward, the wound density of how many wounds are in the unit, is that the size of the Gobbapalooza is obviously a base size that's far greater, with the exception of maybe the Spider. Like, if you took a Web Spinner Shaman, that would probably be an even larger footprint.
Yeah.
It's a pie. Like, it's a 160.
Yeah, it's pretty big. It's pretty big.
It's 160. So Web Spinner on a Ragnarok would be the biggest footprint, but the Gobbapalooza, which you were already going to take, is probably the second largest footprint. So that gives you obviously a bigger button boost. So just a little call out, because why it's so impactful on the Gobbapalooza.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Sneaky Distraction. Hand of Gork is a spell I again have gripes with, but like, I find it very useful for repositioning when I'm not able to do something. In this army, you have lots of wholly within 12 buff ranges that you're trying to manage, or like within 3 when you're losing a Squig boss. So using Hand of Gork to move someone up who needs to get up next to another unit to buff them, whether it's casting a spell, giving your War Scroll buff, even get Sneaky Snufflers, again, like giving them ward saves. Hand of Gork just being like a little yo-yo tool, so you can move a unit from one side of the board to the other, or to be able to tell your opponent, hey, I can go up to 24 inches and go here, like I have availability. Or if it's like tactic denial, it can be really sneaky. Like someone says, slay the entourage. They're going to kill the troll that you just freed up out of combat there in the front. You're like, okay, cast the spell. Oh, I teleport him. He's over here. You're not touching this guy. That was it was nice for you to try, but try again next time. Can give a lot of value. There is a very specific situation if you cast Vicious Sporma is when you take it with Shackles to be able to hit 3 units for the bad D3 multiple times to be able to weaken a front. Or sometimes you're just like, man, I really need to free up my unit right here. There's like 2 wounds left. I need to finish this guy off. Cashing this spell, I'll do to maybe free them up. Anytime you can get ranged damage before the movement phase is always good. It's not a lot of damage, but sometimes you just need, 1 extra damage to be able to free yourself up and then continue with your game plan for the turn. So it's probably my least cast spell, but it's situationally helpful.
It's a get out of jail free card.
Mm-hmm.
Like in a certain situation, like do I go running up that fungoid cave shaman to get within 12 inches and then just go bleh? No. But you're absolutely right. Like if you got 1 or 2 wounds left, you just need to get out of combat. You don't want to be there. It can be enough.
Mm-hmm.
But then obviously you've also got Fangs of the Bad Moon, which is if you've got Scrag on the table, that is always one of your casts. Like Fangs is just so good that I'll do it in your turn and mine.
He is there loading his shotgun and he is waiting to fire. We don't know how well he'll aim or if he'll shoot, but he's loading at all times.
Yeah. Just roll high. Roll high.
Just roll 6s. It's a guaranteed game-winning strategy.
I have done 12 once, and it was glorious.
That sounds fabulous. The highest I've ever gotten is an 11, and I felt really happy. It was a counter cast. Did it for 11 and blew up 3 chosen. It was awesome.
That's sick. Yeah, look. I need the balance because whenever I charge with Kragnos, it's always a 1 and a something. So I'm like, great. If I did 30 mortal wounds, I've done 5.
Yeah,
I've done nothing. Git spell lore, good. You've already acknowledged that we probably 3 cast is enough between Scragrok, Gobblepalooza. Obviously endless spells, which is literally next, is the thing, right? Is that we've now got access to a bunch of endless spells, so a lot of those additional casts can go into this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we were having a brief chat before we started, and when I look at the Gitz manifestations, they aren't bad. I wouldn't put them in the league of like a Cronspine or in the league of, Morbid or something like that. But they're actually quite useful and can be useful. So my question to you is, where do you see, the Dank manifestations, pros and cons? Like, why would you pick Dank manifestations over one of the universals? Or is it always universals for a reason you'll tell me?
So I've always played using the Morbid this edition whenever I've took my Gitz out for a swing. If I was to play really Trog heavy, I think is when you would look at the Dank manifestation lore, mostly simply for just the moon. The moon in there gives you another little aura of a moon that you can use to follow around your Trogs, and giving you the guaranteed +1 save is quite nice. The Arachna Cauldron for the extra spell cast is actually not terrible. Because if that's a free cast of Fangs the Bad Moon and -1 to hit on with Scragrot, and then I have my other foot wizard casting, Voracious Sporma, Hand of Gork, I'm getting the most out of my spells. In turn 1, you're not usually casting any spells that have a ton of relevance unless you're setting up manifestations, which the Arachna Cauldron is a good one to set up early game because no one's going to get rid of it because it's not doing anything. It's just giving you extra cast, and they'd rather be casting their own spells. And then the spider one, it does a couple damage. It's okay. The best thing it is it's really long and it can block off objectives from people from trying to walk onto it. That's kind of in part why Gravetide is also really nice. It's got a big base. It can block, and even just a world of blocking things off. Denying space could be enough to deny your opponent a victory point here for taking an objective or whatever it may be. And I think the one weird one in our lore is the mushroom, because it's so easily avoidable. We don't see a ton of hordes. It doesn't block anything. It kind of just gives your opponent a charge target. So if you're casting your Dank manifestations, that's probably the one you're just going to put on the side unless you're playing against a lot of models. You're probably playing with the other 3, but mostly in a Trog-centric list for that moon. Because being able to do the threat with shackles to be able to weaken things down from multiple sources, or if you're even taking, Jaws just for a decently fighting unit, it gives you other options in other spell lores.
Yeah. So I'm going to just retort for a second, and by retort I mean basically validate what you just said. Because if, again, I'm reflecting on the way I used to use them in third, and I definitely used the Gitz ones way more in third than in fourth. And it's probably because what I got from the bad moon meant the value of the malevolent moon was greater. It used to be an awesome little debuff to casters, not so much anymore. Then its iteration changed where did stabbers get +1 to hit or something? Like there was some.
They got 4 up rallies.
Nah, before that, the edition before that.
Then?
Before that, I'm pretty sure stabbers got like +1 to hit or something, right?
You just reroll once to hit, something like
that.
Yeah,
reroll. Yeah. My point is, again, if I'm a Moon Clan non-Squig player, do I need the bad moon in the center or up on the board, increasing their control score, objective control score by 3? Not really.
No.
Do I need the random characteristic to be able to re-roll for squigs? Probably not. By the time that they're in combat, they don't need that, really. Trogs, absolutely +1 to save. Venom encrusted weapons, yeah, okay, right. If I was building a heavy spider list, yes, I think this was also important. And being able to get the Scuttle Tide, getting a 4-up ward near an Arachnarok. Again, if I'm in a heavy spider list, really good.
Yeah, I'd agree, actually. I never really thought about it for the spiders, but if you are taking it, yeah, I think if you're doing... Because no one does it. But if you're the hero out there playing spiders, take that manifestation lore, crit on 5s, live your life.
I think this goes back to, Michael, what we just said at the start, which was what's dominant right now. And when I say dominant, it's just performing well. It doesn't mean like you're OPing people, but like what's doing well is the rules benefit trogs and squigs. Trogs and squigs. It's what's going well right now. The rules are nice. The 2 sub-factions we talked about were trogs and squigs. And the theme just continues as we've talked about this. Trogs and squigs, trogs and squigs. And these just don't do enough for trogs and squigs. The moon, the mushroom, as much as I love the mushroom, it's a small base size. And you don't see a lot of benefit from it. So I think... unfortunately, it's Kronspine, it's Primal, it's bloody Morbid, it's Twilit Sorceries, it's everything that's not this, unless some trogs.
Yep. And even then, like, if you take Scragrat, you can kind of get away with not wanting the moon, which is list design. If you're designing a list and it doesn't have Scragrat, I think it'd be more incentivized to take your own lore. But if your list has Scragrat in it, which it's about 50% of the time, you probably just cut this and pick a better spell lore.
Yeah, although it does give you, you're not dependent on Scraggy, I guess, is the key, right? It's like, but I think we all agree. Any particular universal endless spells that you like as a Gitz player? Is it literally the traditional ones? Morbid, Primal, Grumdy?
It's probably just Primal or Grumdy. All of our spells are hard to cast, and the book has no real accesses to bonuses to cast. So if I'm fishing for dice anyway, let me fish for something that's really good. So I'll fish for a Purple Sun or a Gravetide or Shackles, which is actually really nice. Like I said, you can kind of combo it up with Vicious Spore Maw. But if you're wanting something to like actually reliably get out of cast, you go for Primal, so you can get out like the Jaws, the Head. They're all relatively easy to cast to make the most use of your cast and just put the most stuff on the board. I'd probably lean between those two if I had to pick.
I'd probably pick Primal. Yep. I'm really high on Primal because you get Burning Head, you get Jaws, but also we get stuck in combat a lot, whether it's your Squig Herd, whether it is your Troggoths. You can't rally in combat. So if I'm healing with Life Swarm, just keeping people in the game. Just keeping them in the game. And then obviously Hand of Gork can deliver them when they die and come back.
Yeah, it's another thing that benefits trolls and not any of your goblins is that Life Swarm. So sad. It doesn't return models anymore. It used to. It's only healing.
Yeah. But your Loon Boss brings models back, so you probably don't. Like, man, the Netters makes me so sad.
I know. They
Why
used
three
to
up?
be so good. And only against infantry. Who sees infantry a lot nowadays? There's not a ton of it.
Yeah, right now it's all cavalry. Like it's all cavalry right now.
I
I mean,
know,
like
right?
there is a little bit of infantry, but it's not. It's
Infantry's
not enough
becoming more popular, just not enough for what we want for Nettas.
Yes. All right. I'm going to move to favorite units. All right.
Sure.
But I'm going to ask you for a couple of your favorites. But I want to talk Kragnos first, just because one, he's a big bad booty daddy. Points have decreased. Offers us something that not many other units in our book offers us, which is going to be high damage, super durable. Like it is what you want from a Mangler Squig, the Loon Bottom Mangler Squig, right? Like
God, yes.
Kragnos is basically what you want the Loon Bottom Mangler Squig to do, but it doesn't, and it's squishy, and people attack it, and then it dies, and then you cry.
Yep.
At the moment, what do you think of Kragnos in a Gitz list?
I don't think he's giving everything that this army naturally is wanting to do. It gives you options to play in different ways, which I appreciate. So if you kind of look at the standard way to play is normally trolls and squigs. And the trolls are kind of your front line, and you kind of cast up around them. People come in, hit your trolls, and then you counterpunch with them. So it kind of is like a self-building castle in the way that the list traditionally is currently built and played. But if you add in Kragnos, it gives you additional threat range that you never had before because of the 3d6 charge. So he's not as tanky as Rock Guts, but he's giving you additional range. And whenever you're able to project extra range at someone, it's always worth considering putting them in a list. I find that it probably leans into playing more with potentially Stabas, because they lack damage. It gives them something to do damage. But it also lets you, if you're trying to alpha pin, so if you, let's say you're casting Hand of Gork on your 40 brick of Stabas, you buffed him up to the brims, you teleport them in front of your unit. You're like, well, now I fail a 9-inch charge, and now they're just sitting there waiting in the wind. Kragnos, with giving you the 3d6 charge, you can now maybe charge them in your shoot or your Stabas or your Shootas or whatever your big block of pinning stuff is. And now you could kind of stop your opponent from moving and slowing the game down to deny them primary points, denying them movement. It gives you additional accesses and different tools to play the army. As well, he's always a decently damaging guy, and you do a guaranteed 36 mortal wounds every time you charge a monster. If you're not doing 36, you're doing it wrong.
I'm going to kill you next time.
Deserved. Well deserved.
I remember charging Scarbrand once with Kragnos. I'm pretty sure I did 3 mortal wounds. Then his mace absolutely annihilated him. So the dread mace all hit, all wounded, and just annihilated Scarbrand before he could fight. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I did 3 mortal wounds. Like, I hate it. So here's my thing with Kragnos. Kragnos, I think it plays well into Gitz, but in a very specific use. Would I take and the reason I like Kragnos is because of the delivery mechanism of the End of Empires.
Yes.
When I think about my army that has, maybe it's my play style, I play with a lot of Squig Herd. It could be 2 units or 1 unit of reinforced Squig Herd. I think it's an incredible delivery mechanism, to your point earlier about not having run and charge anymore through the bad mood. So this is a wonderful delivery mechanism. I've been playing around with some crazy ideas, and that is like a reinforced unit of Fanatics. And again, having that 3d6 delivery mechanism, they fight first. You can combine it with Purple Sun and things like that. But, if you're playing in a very specific use case, I think Kragnos is really good. But you just don't chuck him into every list and think it's Nagash, because it's not. I love the threat ability. I think the pricing is fair. I
think if you're going to put him in a list, you kind of have to build your list around him. He's not something that you just put in there willy-nilly. It's a build around piece for your army that you're wanting to use to make your army play in a specific way that Gitz doesn't naturally have without him.
Another way I've used him is Kragnos with, again, all of the stabbers. Because like, who does the damage in stabbers, especially now that the Loon Boss thing has changed with them? Well, Kragnos can do that, and it can delay the opponent until, and then while my Gits are scoring and they're just holding board and just being annoying. But it is a very specific example.
Yeah.
My lists never start with Kragnos. But if you were going to take Kragnos, yeah, you're building around him.
For sure.
I probably wouldn't do Trogs though. Like, it's just I'd just rather more Trogs.
I think if you're doing Kragnos, it leans towards Squigs and Stabbas if you're trying to do it, to either have your Stabbas pin better, move around better, or have something that hits, like you said, or Squigs just to make them wicked fast.
Yeah. And that's your turn 1 alpha.
Yep.
Just like,
if that's what you want to do is alpha with Squigs, this is your guy.
Yeah. And then hell, get yourself a rabble rouser, chuck it at the back of the board, and then
now we're back to old Gitz. Now we're zooming across the table. We're rolling 5d6 movement plus charges, and then hoping to get in there and kill you all. It'd be great.
Actually, that does work, right? Like the rabble rouser.
Yeah, rabble rouser will give the Squig herd run in charge. So you're now moving 2d6, re-rolling 1, and then you're getting a 3d6 charge. So you're moving a random 5d6 plus 3, and you might get there.
Yeah, because the difference between 3rd edition and 4th edition is the rabble rouser now affects beasts as well as monsters. So when it was just monsters, like, great, I can make my 2 monsters or 3 very handful of monsters. I'm never running a spider up the board. Anyway, going down a rabbit hole, what are some of your favorite units?
So I think, like we talked before, let's go with Gobblepalooza. Standout unit. They do everything that we want. Well, they're somewhere in the back. Okay. This unit should be in probably every Gitz list because of the sheer versatility that they do. So there are 3 wounds each. So with 5 guys, they have 15 wounds. They have a 6-up save. They're not here for saves. They're not here for combat guys. Don't even look at their combat attacks. Figure it out once you're at the table. But what they do get is a 4-up ward. So this is now 15 wounds on a 4-up ward, and they're control 2, which means they randomly will take objectives from your opponent when they don't realize they're control 2. So you probably should tell them ahead of time so they can forget, and then you get them later with this. But they are a wizard with wards that can go in the front, like their frontline wizard. We talked earlier about how they have that ability to spread out to better effect with their spells, which is really nice. And then they have the Gobblepalooza Know What's roll, which can be game-defining when it's used appropriately. So they can add +1 to run and charge rolls. You roll 3+, you get to pick one of these. +1 to run and charge rolls. This is probably the one I do the least. Since you don't have access to run and charge, it's not really like a +2 anymore. So it's actually just a +1. And the amount of times I can get just a +1 versus the other 2 buffs, I'm probably just not picking. Adding +1 to Rend from the Nasty Poisons. So you can make things like Shootas, Stabbas, Trolls, like any of like your core units that you want to be taking, giving them +1 Rend to make your semi-inefficient combat units suddenly like kind of efficient is really nice. Or you can do Mesmerize to shut off commands. So if you're wanting to stop your opponent from redeploying, rallying, covering fire, any of these really core commands, trying to stop them from doing so, which might stop you from playing your game plan, can be largely impactful. So it's usually between Nasty Poison and Memorize are the 2 that you would like to do. When you're envisioning putting them in the list, you're envisioning putting them in for these 2 things. And then you might occasionally have a Scaremonger giving you additional movement. But they're an entire package. And, best part, they're not a hero. So they can go as a unit inside of a regiment and not take up an additional drop, is what makes them kind of, they just do everything that you kind of want all in one. And they can even come back with the Loon Shrine. So you bring back 3. It's now a wizard coming back. And if they're under the light of the Bad Moon, 3 dudes coming back counts as what? 9 on an objective. So if someone's near your Loon Shrine, you're like, hi, +9 to my control score. That's mine now. And it's out of nowhere, and they're just really solid.
Yeah, you beat me to that one. Yeah, Gobblepalooza is great. I start a lot of lists with the Gobblepalooza. There has to be a really good reason where the Gobblepalooza isn't in there. And yeah, Nasty Poison is my default, but Mesmerize has come in handy, especially mid to late game. Really, I actually quite often.
Yeah.
But the combination, again, going back to my Squig Herd, using Squig Herd or Boingrots, getting the Nasty Poison with my Squig Herd, then get your Squig Boss to little boink them.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go Squig a Lance, you're getting the extra attack. All of a sudden, the volume and delivery mechanism on Squig Herd, just lifting things off the board, is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And shoot us, because it doesn't say combat.
No.
So it does apply to your shoot us bows.
What are shooters hitting on these days? Because I remember looking at this in the past, and I was always unimpressed. It was like, all right, they're hitting on 4s, wounding on 5s. That's why.
But there's 40 of them, which is 80 attacks. And with covering fire, you're giving 161 dice a round.
It's a lot of
a lot of dice. And when you randomly kill 2 Kurnoth hunters with like random goblin bows, you're like, yeah, I don't
want to roll 80 dice.
No one has the patience for it, except when it works like decently well.
I don't want to roll 80 dice.
I will talk to you about shooters later. They have a place.
At least when I run my double-bladed witch elves on 60 attacks, at least they're high volume attacks.
Yeah.
I like to be on 3s, wounding on 3s, not hitting on 4s, wounding on 5s.
But you can get them to 3s and 5s. Or with priority target, the way it currently is, you can be 3s and 4s.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a world, Coach. There is a world.
I'm polishing a turd.
But it's a really nice turd.
Okay. All right, point taken. And I think when you do compare shooters with stabbers, for a similar price point, right now, in the past, I would argue stabbers every day of the week. With the changes in netters, I would say shooters are definitely in a much better spot, giving you something that Gitz really lacks, and that is shooting at medium range.
18-inch range isn't bad at all.
It's not bad, and it can be enough chip damage to yeah.
So,
I think it's worth looking into.
So, do you want to pull up shooters now, since we're kind of already naturally talking about them?
Sure, let's keep going. I'll find you. Keep talking, and I'll find them.
So shooters is naturally fitting into the style if you're playing into the Castle Trogs build. When you're already wanting to castle up, the hardest thing to do is if your opponent doesn't charge your castle. Shooters kind of give you an incentive to do so. The 18-inch range means you can actually hit someone from decently far away, and they can reach targets that you can't normally target. So if you don't have shooters, your only threat range is like shackles, which is the like 18-inch throw out your shackles, do some damage, and then Scragrot. Otherwise, no one really has any incentive to come in and hit your trolls. But if you have these shooters up in the midboard, they are great for objective control. If you just have 40 of them, that's 40 bodies you can put on a point with your buffs of the musician, plus your buffs from the moon if you're able to get it. You can add additional control scores to take points that you could not normally take. And it's still 40 wounds for your opponent to clear that you can then just return. But all the while, if I'm counter shooting on 5s and 5s and I'm doing 4 damage, I'm happy. Either my opponent spent a command point or I'm doing probably more damage. So making them either waste command points or just doing any chip damage to wear my opponent down over the course of the game, while I'm able to replenish between my Trog healing and my rallies, because I'm probably taking the the command trait for the extra rally dice. So you're able to keep your units relatively healthy while slowly whittling theirs down, can lead to a route to success. Like I played these shooters and I had them killing Be'lakor, Chosen, Keeper of Secrets. Like they can do damage over time to finish off units you could not normally reach.
Yeah, I'm just having a look. I'm just having a look at shooters versus stabbers, because in the past, we used to have the rule where you could test objectives within 9 inches with stabbers, right? And that for me was always why I would choose a stabber over a shooter.
For sure.
And I was just while we're talking, I'm just rereading it, and like when I look at the 2 war scrolls, stabbers versus shooters, stabbers are 10 points cheaper.
Yep.
So currently 140 versus 150. The difference between the two is that for 10 points, I get a shooting attack,
Mhm.
the same melee profile, but I get a shooting attack,
Mhm.
but I lose a point of save. So these are 6s, they're 5s.
Mhm.
Outside of that, the War Scroll is identical. For 10 points,
Mhm.
I'm taking the shooting. I'm
Yeah.
taking the shooting. Oh, sorry, no, the stabbers have 2 attacks, while the shooters only have 1 attack.
But the shooters are realistically 3. They're shooting and
No,
they're in
I'm
combat.
talking
Yeah, but
about
in combat, in combat they're 1 less, but their attacks are like, anyways.
When I have access to covering fire, when I have access to 18 inches is quite decent, at least in the current edition. It's hard to argue with stabbers. Like, it's hard to argue stabbers over shooters. Like, shooters are the stronger choice.
The only way you kind of lean towards shooters is in a very specific build where you can make them little murder monsters. But like it's a Rube Goldberg machine that you have to like jump through hoops to make work. Shooters are more a independent, just doing the thing. And that's again what you want when you're trying to play in your events is have your stuff do it and do it consistently, which stabbers just currently lack a little bit of, especially for the points difference.
I will say that if you're going to go stabbers, you've got to have that loon boss, because the loon boss gives you on that 2-up return D6 slain models or add +1 to wound rolls. So that, and then obviously, you can do the double fight between the loon boss and that.
Yeah.
But you're heavily investing. I think if you're going all in on Moon Clan, like I like to, there's obviously an argument for it. But if you're someone who's just adding 1 unit of stabbers or shooters to your trogs or your squigs because they want to be screen or objective controllers or they want to clog up the board, I think the argument here is the shooters, unless you're willing to invest into the loon boss.
Yep.
I think that's your dependency. That's your, and now all of a sudden, what, a reinforced unit of stabbers is what? So 280 plus the loon boss. Was he about
like
100-ish?
He's more than 100. He's like 120, 130.
So what's that? So it's like almost 3. So you're approaching 400 to 500 points. Like, is this unit worth 130 points? Is this unit worth? Is this combination worth up to 500?
Unless you really make some magic happen, it's hard to get that much from them.
Well, I mean, now you're in territory of Kragnos. Like,
yeah,
like if you're playing or block of reinforced rock guts.
And the thing is, rock guts will do what stabbers do, just better. Independently, no buffs needed. They just do the thing.
Getting +1 to their save from the bad moon. They're being able to regenerate. Yeah. Again, it gets into a weird territory.
Yeah.
All right, what other favorite units have you got? You've given me stabbers versus shooters. You've given me loon boss. Any ones that you know what? Let's go to Scraggy and then I'll delay you for a second. We'll go to Scraggy because we've talked Scraggy. Look, Scraggy's a great war scroll. It does force you to be the war master, so he has to be the general unless you got Trug as well. But overall, it's just a strong war scroll. I'm a little bit sad that he's lost his shooting attack.
I'm a little sad he lost his +1 to cast.
That also is true. I missed that.
So lots of good things on this guy. For a board, so this dude doesn't accidentally get sniped from random damage. Being able to, his best ability when you need it is the bad moon moving. So if you're like, I'm playing trolls, or in a mixed list, I need my moon so I can move my trolls in this way, or even just I think I need the coverage, because like if you're playing very carefully, you have to either be within 12 of your loon shrine or you're within 12 of you're in your quadrant. And if you're wanting to push forward onto their side of the table, Scragrock can say, you don't worry about this, bud. I got you. And we'll push the moon to the middle of the table. Or if you've already rolled the 4-up turn 1, you're like, well, I don't want my moon to go away. I guess I'll keep it in the middle. I'll keep the moon. He's the reliability that gives you of your allegiance abilities when and if you need them. Is quite nice.
And the price point, 230 for a double cast wizard has a very flexible regiment options. 4-up ward. Obviously, you know, the spell, the Fangs of the Bad Moon.
Awesome.
In addition to the holding the what's it called? The Bad Moon.
Mm-hmm.
It pays itself. Like, it's hard not to take Scragrot.
Yeah.
I think
regiment
it's
options allows you to play actually those mixed builds. So if you're wanting to play not mono Trog, mono Squig, if you're wanting to experiment with borderline even 3 different types of units, Scragrot allows that due to him being a War Master and his regiment options being the most open. Make him a very solid pick if you're trying to expand out of a 1 or 2 mono play style builds.
I've seen that play out a lot, especially with like Spider Riders. People like I like Spider Riders. I've been high on them for a while, especially this current book. I think it plays well into Spider Riders, but I don't want to take a Web Spinner Shaman to do them, or even to your point around the Snarlfang Riders.
Yes,
you don't want to have these as auxiliaries. You know, like, I don't want to take another hero to run these spiders. So how do I get around that? Boom. Someone like Scragrot, and still has all the great things like the spells. So again, there's another reason why you see Scraggy.
Mm-hmm.
He gives you everything you want.
All right. With Spider Riders pull up, you ready to talk about the single best thing on their War Scroll?
Go for it.
Control 2. Unironically, is the best thing that's written on this War Scroll is that they're Control 2. So, like, they have Goblin Bows. They're bad. That's fine. They do have Crit Mortal on a couple of attacks. So if you put 5 of these guys in, you can do, you know, 2 or 3 mortal wounds. So, like, as your frontline screen, putting these guys in front is, like, who cares if they die? You might do 1 or 2 mortals, you die, and you can return them from the Loon Shrine. But if they ignore 5 Spider Riders and let you just walk behind them, be like, oh, I kept my foot hero back here. He counts as 5 for whatever reason. I'm like, okay, cool. My 5 spiders count as 11. Don't mind me. Just gonna walk around and take things from you. And then maybe they'll go kill a foot hero. Or maybe they're screening out your squigs and they're like sitting in front of you. But yeah, the best rule, the best thing on this War Scroll is Control 2.
I would also say the movement 10 and their points that aren't on the War Scroll. 110 points for what? 10 health. 10 health. Movement of 10. Great thing to seize the center. Great for taking the flank, and then, as you said, go out and like pin them and be annoying. It's 200 odd points for two.
Yeah.
And then the rest of your army can come in into the center of the board. As you said, control score 2, stealing objectives, just generally being annoying. Nice little shooting attack as well. That's delicious.
It's chip damage.
And it's just annoying. Like, it's annoying.
No one wants to go send a real hammer. No one wants to go send Varangard to go kill 5 Spider Riders. No one wants to do that. It's not a good use of their time. There's trolls in the middle of the board to go fight. So these guys kind of can sometimes just get ignored. Which is a place where I normally also find Snarlfang Riders kind of fit a similar role to Spider Riders.
So what's the pros and cons? Let's imagine I could only take 1. What would you suggest? And would you take the spiders, or would you take the Snarlfang Riders?
So if I didn't like spiders as a person, like just the animal, the spider. So we take that out of the equation and we look at the War Scrolls. I think I still slightly lean the Snarlfang Riders, but it's a lot closer. If the points are right, the spiders are cheaper, so it makes them more likely to be taken. But the wolves have that free D6 move. The can't catch us, which you have up on screen. The free D6 move, it's not core, it's not anything. So if they're in Scragrot's regiment and someone says, I'm going to kill those wolves, and they have to go and like charge them and fight them, you can move 2d6. You can redeploy plus their move and just kind of scooch away from them and make it really hard. You can use this to cut off lanes of traffic for your opponent to come and hit you. So like they're like looking at your Loon Shrine. All right, I'm going to use these wolves. I'm going to use them to cut off, get in your way. So you have to fight these guys instead of hitting my more valuable pieces. They have the same kind of bow shots. They're whatever. But if they're like out taking a flank, these guys can actually do a little bit more damage due to the wolves, where the spiders are doing like a handful of mortal wounds and probably like 2 saves. Like these Snarlfang Riders, their wolves, 4s and 3s damage 2 with 2 attacks apiece. You can suddenly spike and do 6, 8 damage in combat. And between all of those different pieces, like you can remove a side chaff screen that like your take the flank unit versus their take the flank unit. Yours has a good chance of winning in that mono, fight that they're having there on the side of the board.
Yeah, like currently 20 points difference between Snarlfang versus spiders. So what's the difference, right? Control score 1 versus control score 2. You've got movement of 12 versus movement of 10. You're right, though. The can't catch us is such a powerful rule. It is either a free move without using redeploy, so keep the command point up your sleeve, or double down. You can do it, right? You can use redeploy.
It's not a core ability. It's like how Corn can do that with like Blood Tithe or anything. Because if it's not labeled core, you can just keep going.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, fascinating. So you potentially move an extra up to 12, minimum 2, maximum 12.
Yeah. It's really cute. I will say the one hindrance for Snarlfang Riders. They don't have any relevant Git keywords. Is the one downside of these guys. They are Git mob.
Yes.
So they don't benefit from Light of the Bad Moon. So they don't get control scores. No. They don't have Squig keyword. They don't have anything. Versus Spider Riders will still at least get crit on 5s. So these guys are kind of an independent, don't care about the moon unit. But if you have the 20 points to spare and you're only going to pick between one of these, aside from my own personal bias, I probably lean slightly towards the Snarlfang Riders, but not massively. And if the points don't fit, 5 Spider Riders will do just as fine with control scores. They are great at taking points.
Yeah, the price point isn't that much different right now. I'm just looking at the melee attack. They're crit mortals, right? So they're hitting on they're 2 attacks each. So what's that? Statistically, one or two of those guys will be crit mortals.
Yep.
For 1 damage.
Versus 10 attacks, you're probably giving 2 to 3 saves that might be doing 2 to 4 damage.
Yeah, under the Light of the Bad Moon. Sorry, obviously that changes. That would then be around 3 to 4 crit mortals. While not under the light would just be 1 to 2. So I think you're like when you look at the benefit, the Snarlfang Riders are close enough that you'd take them if you've got the points. Yeah.
There's a world that you take spiders as a objective unit, but I prefer speed whenever I'm playing my games. I find that Gitz as a whole is leaning towards the slow side unless you're taking Kragnos or this or that or other. But the army tends to be naturally slow, and I'd rather have this fast unit that can be super quick to be able to just zip across the board and do movement shenanigans. I don't find myself lacking in control scores very often unless I'm building differently, in which I may lean towards spiders, but not very often.
Yeah, when I think about the role of spiders or Snarlfang, right? I'm heavy trolls as an example. I am zoning off the board, blocking off like the mighty V of the ducks, making sure that things aren't pinning down my big blocks of 6 Troggoths that I want to get into A, but they've pinned me with B, right? So these guys can help zone out and control the board. With my squigs, I'm going to, again, create a screen to ensure that I get to charge, to get the pluses, the boost through the Squigalanche, and I'm not suffering, damage I don't need to suffer through. With my Moon Clan, they're not that very fast, so I need to be able to, again, 1, slow you down from coming into me, or 2, using speed to, pin you from the flanks, or because I can't use traditional Moon Clan units on take the flank, for example, because it'll just take me 10 years to get back into the middle of the fight, which is where I would potentially use something like hoppers. But hoppers are very expensive now. Now that they're forced to be units of 10, not units of 5, they are a very expensive choice.
For sure.
This slots in.
Mhm.
Spiders slot in.
They are a cheap, fast, take the flanks unit that you can't fail. You just get to do the thing, and whenever you can just do something, it's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, and they can't catch us is definitely a great rule.
It's
a
really good.
Yeah, that's a really good rule. I think that probably is a difference maker between the two.
Yes, absolutely.
Any other favorite units before we get into your lists? I'll give you two. I'll give you two more.
Two more. Okay.
Two more favorite units.
So let's go Sneaky Snufflers. They are the most applicable between lists.
Good. By the way, I'm just going to say love Fanatics. Both are great.
We'll talk about Spore Splatters.
Yeah,
I can talk about Spore Splatters too.
Let me just say, while it's up, when I run Moon Clan, I have to take Spore Splatters.
Yes.
I just have to, because without the +1 attack, I'm doing nothing. I'm hitting you with a wet pillow. I'm literally just like, I'm basically like Homer Simpson when he was in that boxing match, just taking punches and seeing if I can just like take as many punches until you fall over. You got no energy. Basically, that's what I'm doing if I don't have that. So for me, Spore Splatters are incredible. Highly recommend if you're running Moon Clan. Even outside of Moon Clan, I mean,
they're okay with like things like Boingrot Bounders. Maybe.
Yeah. I got real beef with Boingrots. I'm like, you're 5-up save now. Like, I don't like you as much.
I mean, they do what they always did. You better go and kill them on the charge, otherwise you die.
Yeah, but they used to have a 4-up save, so I did to be a bit more durable.
They used to
anyway,
on 3. Sorry, continue.
No, just I'm gonna have a win. I love Boing. I've got 25 Boingrots in my cupboard here. Like, trust me.
Mine are sitting right there behind me. They're over there.
25.
Yeah.
+1 attack is gold. So if you got the Moon Clan keyword, this is really good. Highly recommend. You were saying Sneaky Snufflers. Yeah.
All right. So if you are building with Squigs, if you are building with Moon Clan, these guys should be a heavy consideration for your list. So they have the one ability, giving you the shrooms, making your guys all high. It's a 3+ roll originally to give them a 5-up ward, and if you roll a 6, you're giving +1 attacks. +1 attacks, really good. 5-up wards, insanely good. But if you're under the light of the bad moon, you're getting +1 to the roll, which means you're going for 2-ups for 5-up wards and 5-ups for extra attacks. So if you're in a Gitz heavy list, you're able to get your Moon Clan Grots up to 4 attacks a model between the Spore Splat Fanatics, which we already briefly looked at, and these guys. So when you can start getting 40 Stabbas with 160 attacks on 3s and 4s with Rend, you start to see that they can start putting in a little bit of damage against even a 4-up save. You start getting close to like 20 when you're getting them all in. Now, granted, you probably won't get the extra attack. You probably won't be able to fight with all of your guys. You probably lost some here and there. But they are able to actually roll enough dice with meaningful amounts to actually start killing your opponents. And the main reason you take them, you don't take them for the +1 attack. If you get that, it's gravy. You're taking them to give you units that can now survive by giving them ward saves for units that are generically not tough. Trolls, naturally tough. You don't really have that between Squigs. You don't have that in Moon Clan. You're needing something to keep your models on the board. Because if without a ward save, you're getting taken off in droves and your army's going to be mostly gone by turn 3. By giving this to you, it gives you extra time to keep your models on the board so you can do things like die out of combat, then use your command trait, rally, and even the loon boss if you're playing Stabbas to refill your unit to then be able to stand on those objectives and score those primary points and outscore your opponent. And they just fit in really well. And then again, they have 5 attacks, 4s and 4s. Like they might randomly kill something with a 5-up ward of their own. They're deceptively hard to kill and deceptively damaging. They fit a good role in the army. They're a little expensive point wise, but they're still worth taking.
Yeah, I can't remember how many points they are. When I run them with Stabbers, again, when you combine Stabbers plus the Loon Boss bringing back up to D6, it can make them way survivable. But my preference, I like to use them with Boingrots and the Mangler. You talked about the Loon Boss on Mangler Squig, how it can be very squishy. Put that 5-up ward. It stays until the start of your next turn. it just keeps them around longer. It means you don't need to rely on fight another day. If fight another day fails on you, you've got another mechanism to stay around. I find that I drop Snufflers more often. Because it's hard, because when I've got Gobblepalooza and Snufflers, I've got too many support pieces also when I add Scragrot and anything else, and my army becomes too much support. The one thing that I really started doing in 3rd edition that instead of just using Sneaky Snufflers behind the lines as a buff piece, actually put them forward. They are, giving themselves the ward. Because they're MoonClan, they give themselves the ward.
They already have it naturally.
Of course, yes. Sorry, yes, of course. Yes, they've already got the ward, so you can Hand of Gork them up the board, or even just use them as a deployment screen with a native 5-up ward. And they also come back from the Loon Shrine, right?
They do. They are eligible.
So you can be more aggressive with them and then bring them back for a second wave. But yeah, the +1 attack is nice, but it's the ward that you're going for. That's the guarantee, almost.
Sure. Yeah, you just want to make sure you're not putting them too willy-nilly into combat, because you can't give wards out while they are in combat themselves. They're a little preoccupied to pick mushrooms. But yeah, like if you're needing, like you're scared that something's going to run at you, like these guys aren't necessary to your game plan, but they can give good dividends if they're able to stick on the board long enough.
I just seem to drop them often. That's my thing. Like, unfortunately, in my Squig lists, yes. MoonClan, obviously Trog.
Really? Squigs die already. If they're already dead, 5-up board's usually not the difference maker. My Stabbas need anything they can to stay on the table.
I'm talking with Boingrots and Hoppers. Mostly Boingrots. My herd, I'm not so worried about the 5-up ward. Because I'm happy for them to die and rinse and repeat.
Right, because you still get the mortals.
Yeah, I want to send them in with waves of, use the Squig boss, send them in, do the damage, then bring them back. Anyway, I think any final unit, and then we go to lists.
No, I don't think there's any other major units we need to hit on. Everyone knows what trolls are.
You know what? I want your opinion on Trug. I'm not going to let you go with that Trug. Let's go to Trug. That's your last one. Not the Trug herd, just pure Trug herd. Where do you stand, and what are your thoughts on Trug versus your dank old Trog boss, or taking 2 dank old Trog bosses, or whatever it is?
So the major thing I don't like about Trug, there's lots of things to like about him, but he doesn't have a natural ward. Makes him susceptible to getting taken out in one go. If you're playing him the Trog herd, where you're able to heal that extra D6 during combat, it makes him hard to kill if you're not killing him in one shot. And then the random ability is quite nice. +1 attacks if you're playing all trolls is really good when you can get rock guts up to like 4 attacks a piece at damage 3. The amount of output he's giving to your other units is quite good. The +1 rend is fine. Like, you're usually decently high on rend if you're playing trolls. And the -1 to hit or the 5-up ward, like those last 2 abilities are also decent. Like the shooting one's very unreliably useful, depends what you're playing against. And then the 5-up ward is just always good. But you're getting to roll multiple dice. You're able to kind of pick what you want. So he does considerable damage. He can be very hard to kill. I just usually find if I'm playing a Trolls heavy list, or if I'm playing if I'm playing Trolls heavy, he's in the list. Yeah. If I'm going to be more mixed arms, like Trolls and something, he's usually one of the first pieces I cut.
You take the dank old Drog boss as the leader.
Because he can take your artifacts, your traits, still buffs Trolls, but he's not taking up too many points, whereas this guy takes up a good chunk.
Yeah, agreed. And I'm not so worried about the ward, because I think if Trug had a ward, along with the heal, along with the +1 to save, you're looking at a 500-point unit.
Yeah.
Like at 380 right now, you cannot get a ward on this natively, as well as having heal, as well as having everything else. So
fully agree.
But it's a cool model. You're right. I probably wouldn't have it in a mixed list. And if I was going to spend 400 points, again, like what is this doing in a mixed list? I'd probably rather the Mercenary Gargant. I'd much rather, find the points for for Kragnos. I'd rather find something else because in a mixed list, not enough. Trog list, absolutely. Wouldn't be auto include, but definitely not a bad choice.
For sure.
Not a bad choice. All right. We've talked a lot about units, and obviously there's a lot of units we could have talked about. So now let's get into Michael's lists, and we're going to talk a little bit about, you've given me 3 options, which is really cool. You're going to talk to me a little bit about the logic behind them, right? So we've got a Squiggerlanch list. It is Morbid Conjuration as the manifestation law. Scragrot the Loon King is the big boss. You've got a reinforced unit of shooters, reinforced unit of Troggoths, reinforced unit of Troggoths, Snarlfang Riders as Regiment 1. Regiment 2 is your Squig boss with Gnashing Jaw, or Gnasher Jaw. Squig. Where'd the word jaw come from?
Jaws of Mork, probably.
Probably. Your artifact is the Clammy Cow. The trait is the Clammy Hand. Boingrot Bounded, Gobapalooza, and Reinforced Squig Herd. So what is the deal here? What does this thing do?
So this is the list. I went with 5-0 at South Bend. So this is, of the 3 lists we're going to look at, this is probably the one I think is the most competent, and definitely the one I've played the most. This is a castle army. It is going to put those 2 squads of trolls up in the middle, and I'm going to whittle you down slowly until I'm able to either outscore you or whittle you down so little that you can't be able to make a return in this game. Between Scragrot, Shootas, just to do chip damage, again, the 18-inch covering fire, normally fire, counter spell if you even want to, just to put out range damage to force them to come forward into your trolls, is actually quite effective. So you're able to remove bits and pieces just a little bit at a time, and no one can keep up with the amount of chip damage you're dealing. The 5 Boingrot Bounders and the Snarlfang Riders are honestly like your take the flanks units. They're your side units. They're doing whatever you need. You didn't quite have the points to upgrade Boingrot Bounders to something else. Not that you could fit them in a different regiment. And then you have the Squig Herd. They're your really only strong hammer unit for your, like, I need this one unit to die. I will send the Squig Herd in to do their job. They're usually sitting behind everything else. I have the Rock Guts in front. Shooters are kind of in the middle to the front. These guys are in the back waiting for you to hit me, and I'm going to lift whatever target I find is the scariest with these guys. The Squig Boss is there to give them crit mortal. You can do the same thing with the Boingrot Bounders. They can be a sub-hammer, so where they can outfight chaff if they charge, but if they aren't charging, they're probably dead. And then we have the Gobapalooza being the best boys ever, giving rend to my shooters most of the time. And if they aren't needing rend, I can do no commands on a unit. They're casting spells. They're being in the front. They're screening. And yeah, so I'm playing like a mid-board castle, and I'm slowly just chipping you away, trying to eke out a win by like turn 4 is what I tend to try to find.
Yeah, nice. It's a I like it. I mean, other than bloody Boingrots. In the ideal world, bloody Boingrots.
Yeah, but like this is a good mixed build. This is if you look at this list, I'm not leaning hard into any sub-faction. The hardest part for me was picking my battle formation. I'm like, I guess I can give my trolls extra healing, but I don't have a ton of trolls to benefit. I can do the Moon Clan one, but the Moon Clan one is substantially worse than the other 2, or I can make my Squig Herd hit really hard. And I felt with this list, what I was lacking was a major hammer. So I opted to make my Squig Herd be a bigger hammer versus the additional survivability I could offer to my Rock Guts.
Yeah, it definitely would be the way I would go. Like getting the +1 attack on the Squig Herd. It's just worth its weight in gold, especially like there's a real pacing lesson to learn where when to pull the trigger at the right time. And I think this is the Daughters of Cain in me, like hold back. And then when the opportunity strikes, you send the Squig Herd in and they just lift what they want to lift. The Brock Guts is a nice little way to protect them and stop them from being pinned in or, not killing them on a charge. So I like it. I guess the risk is being shot off the board with them, which is always going to be the challenge with Squig Herds. You don't want to hold them back too long.
No. And that's why you actually can use your shooters to whittle down their shooting. They're not going to shoot down 40 shooters in a turn. And with the Clammy Hand as your command trait, you're able to rally and keep your unit topped up more efficiently than them. It gives you a little bit of more play into shooting.
Plus the Gobberpalooza will sneaky distraction, right? That'll also play a nice little defensive piece.
Only if the enemy unit is wholly within 12 when shooting, which I usually don't find to be the case.
No, you're right. You're right. You're right. I was thinking it was longer than 12. No, it's 12.
Yeah, that's the downside of that spell.
Make it. Let's make it board wide. Make it like Croak.
Sure. Yeah, board wide. I'm in.
Board wide. Board wide. The sky is made of spores, and you can't see now, so you must want to hit. Let's make that happen. Next list is sorry. Is there anything you want to talk about with the other list? Like I think you described it really well. How does this one differ? So this is spiders because we feel bad.
Yeah.
You've got your Fungoid Cave Shaman, which is General, Loon Touched, Gobberpalooza, Reinforced Unit of Shooters, Sneaky Snufflers, Spore Splatter Fanatics. Regiment 2 is Squig Boss with the Clammy Cow, Boingrot Banners Reinforced, Squig Herd Reinforced, Squig Hoppers. Then you've got, I love the charity here. You've got the Web Spinner Shaman, and then 3 units of Spider Riders.
So this version of the list is a lot more aggressive. There's no unit in this army that is willing to take a punch for anybody. Anything in this list that gets punched will likely die. But you have a lot more objective presence. You're a lot more board control. You unfortunately have to go up to 3 drops, which is fine. But you're able to do more applicable damage from range. Like you're able to just do more, not excessively more, but you can do more. And you also get the cute little tech with the Web Spinner Shaman who can like teleport to terrain features, which is really cute. So you can extend your spell ranges. So the Spider Riders are kind of your frontline dudes. These are the things you're letting get charged. And if they die, you have no cares. And if they do live, they do what we talked about earlier. They're objective control 2. And we're making the most use for what spiders are good for, which is being in the way, dying, and taking objectives. And then you have the shooters who are still just doing chip damage. And if you need to, with the Sneaky Snufflers, they can actually get up to like 3 attacks a model and be competent in combat, which is kind of funny when you look at these guys being a better profile than the standard Stabba in combat base. With the extra attacks, like it can get there. The 5-up ward helps. But you're probably putting the 5-up ward on either your Bounders, your Squig Herders, your Hoppers on the turn you're sending them in. You're giving them Crit Mortals from the Squig Boss, and you're able to just take these units, apply them into combat, giving them Crit Mortal, extra attacks from the Squigillant, extra attack for the Riders from Spore Splattas, maybe even extra attacks from Sneaky Snufflers. Like you're just making a giant death ball that you're then throwing into your opponent and hopefully just nuking them off the board. And then when they die on the clapback, because these guys are fragile, 5-up saves, multiple wounds, but they do die, you can use your Lightning Shine, return them. You now have another set of dudes that you can then buff up, send them in, because you've weakened them from your first round of fighting. You send them in, do the same amount of damage, and usually it's enough to have you attrition out your opponent versus outlive your opponent. In the first list, I didn't have very many units die that were of importance to me because they were big and tanky. In this list, I'm willing to sacrifice and trade my pieces, but I trade more effectively because of my Loon Shrine. I can return those units.
So I'm looking, just having a look at Boingrot Bounders.
They are 3 attacks, 4s and 4s. You can give them +2 attacks for the Riders and +1 attack for the Jaws. With an all-out attack, there are 3 attacks. 3 attacks base. You can get them up to 5. They are 3s and 4s with an all-out attack, rend 1, and then they are damage 2 if you charge, which is a lot of dice to be throwing at damage 2. And then the Jaws, same kind of thing, same profile, but it'll be 3s and 3s. You can give them Crit Mortal. You can get them to 4 attacks if you charge from your sub-faction, and then they're 1 damage apiece. So 10-pack of these guys in the right scenario can be swinging high, but like they are dicey, but you're rolling a lot of dice with them with multiple damage. Is their benefit.
Yeah, because for me, it's always the question of Boingrots versus Hoppers. And obviously Hoppers are more expensive, but you get more models.
For sure.
The points difference is 50. You know, the on the 2-up, on the charge, you get the couple of extra damage, which is nice. The speed of Hoppers is definitely faster than the Boingrots. But obviously the attack profile isn't nearly as good.
So Squig Hoppers were in there because of the weirdness points can get. There, even just 10 Hoppers, giving them crit mortal from the Squig boss and sending them on their way will let them kill most things. They're a fast unit that can, like, if you're using them as your tank the flanks unit, they outfight your flank most of the time because that's still 20 wounds for 10 dudes, and you can give them the 5-up ward if you really want from the sneaky snufflers. And they have their cheap, like, little bounce over you damage. So, like, if they're sticking around, you're like, man, I really don't want these guys here. Okay, I'll take my mortal wounds for retreating and boing, 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 and I'll fly over you, get away. And they just kind of become an annoying unit that can sometimes do excessive damage.
And they've got a high wound density. That's the thing, right? 10 models in there. So that's 20 wounds. Yeah, they're on 6-up saves, but they're fast. They're flying over things, doing mortal damage on a 4-up. So
yeah,
it's interesting. I like it. I like the direction you're going.
Yeah. So like this is again a different build. It's leaning towards high damage, but I don't think it's near as good or consistent as something that does include Trogs, but it's a different take on it, which still I think has some play in the game that we currently live in.
And I mean, even if you dropped like Regiment 3, which is your Web Spinner Shaman, you 3. So what's that, about 500 points? Web Spinner Shaman's 130, Spider Riders are 110 each. So you're around the 500 mark. Like that 500 points could go anywhere.
Yeah.
So, and this is the thing, right? Like this is not telling you this is the list to run, folks, but you can pick and choose and do what you want to do. I think, we've talked a little bit about the Snarlfang Riders. You could get 2 units of Snarlfang Riders. There's so much flexibility here, which is what I really like about Gitz. Is it's a blessing and a curse how easy it is to write lists, but then you introduce one thing, it's like, okay, how does it make that work? And then all of a sudden your list is completely morphed into something completely different. Blessing and a curse. The last one here is, and by the way, where are the Trog lists, folks? You're wondering? Go onto any app and go look at Warhammer, and you'll go to Warhammer and you'll find a million Trog lists. You know what they look like. It's the list is written 80% of the way. You just season to taste. So they're pretty easy to do, Michael. Right?
Yeah.
Dank or Trog boss. You're gonna have a bunch of rock guts.
Control C, Control V. Done.
Yeah. Maybe you got a couple of fell waters in there if you really want
some
to.
Squig Herd if you want to be cool.
Well, if you want to be an edgelord, or actually, to be fair, like Trog players, like I think 4th edition started with a lot of like all in on Trogs. Now you're starting to see that blend of 50-50 roughly, where you have like Trogs and Squigs, however you want. But again, you want to at least go to Warhammer, go check them out. Great website, but also you'll find a heap of lists that doing well. The last one Michael's gotten for us is where are the stabbers? I assume because they're hiding, right? Like they're
everywhere. They're hiding in plain sight.
So what do we got here? You got a Loon Boss, who's the general, Backstabber Blade. Shout out for you for your different artifact.
Yeah.
The Boyne Grot Bounders reinforced. Got the Loser. You've got Moon Clan Stabbers who are reinforced. You have a Regiment 2, which is Squig Boss with the Nasher Squig, not Nasher Jaws. 2 units of Sneaky Snufflers. 1 unit of Spore Splatter Fanatics. You then got a Fungoid Cave Shaman as your 3rd regiment, with the Clammy Hand, Moon Clan Shooters reinforced, Squig Herd reinforced, Squig Herd not reinforced. This is a lot of bodies.
Yes. This is 153 models, if I remember correctly. I took this to a GT, went 3-1-1 with this. It is not. This entire list can fall apart to a 2-up roll. You are making a Goldberg machine of really efficient little guys. So there's a funny die roll phase. It's not an official phase, but it's part of the hero phase. We have the Loon Boss rolling a 2+ to give your Stabbas +1 to wound or returning models.
Yes.
You have your Squig Boss giving either crit mortals or additional movement. You have both squads of Sneaky Snufflers trying to either give you ward saves, which you're probably doing on your 2 big bricks of Grots, or on your Boyne Grot Bounders, or even Squig Herd, depending on whatever you need to have it. And then you also get to have your Gobblepalooza make their know-what's roll. You are on 5 random dice rolls to determine if your army can function this game or not.
All right, so we're gonna listen. I got a die. I just picked up a dice from my table. Let's go.
You're probably gonna get 4 of these.
Let's go. All right, so let's. What's the first one?
Loon Boss roll.
Roll the 1.
All right, failed. Right, so far so good.
So how does that impact me?
So now your stabbers already don't kill things; they're killing even less things.
Okay, so I don't get my +1 to wound. Okay, that
one's down.
What's my next roll?
You got 2 squads of sneaky snufflers.
All right, roll the 6 and I roll the 6. Cool.
All right, you're +2 attacks on 2 separate units with 5 up wards. Now you're living the dream. It's your birthday.
Sick. Now my snufflers.
So now you need to do your squig boss for your extra mortal wounds.
Roll the 5.
All right, you got crit mortals, and now you need to roll 3 up to give your shooters or stabbers rend.
I roll the 4.
All right, congrats! You got 4 out of the 5. You're pretty good hero phase. Professional Gitz player over here. But you get to make this really cool machine of a list. So you're taking a bunch of lists, and everyone looks at your individual units and make like, man, this unit sucks. But I'm taking Spore Splat Fanatics, I'm taking Sneaky Snufflers, I'm taking Gobblepalooza, I'm taking these 3 units to now make my unit establish 160 attacks with a 5 up ward, +1 to wound, +1 rend, and then plus an additional attack from the Spore Splat is just being nearby. Like they're just doing a naturally more aggressive thing, and all the while you still have Squig Herd in the list just going around and killing things. Squig Herd are very good at killing things, and if, let's say, your Stabba squad gets whittled down, they're good at objective control, you still get the Moon, so you're able to out-contest primaries very well. But if they die away, you use your Loon Boss to return D6. You have your command trait for the extra rally, so you're able to put more models back into the unit. You still have ranged threat projection because you have your shooters. And shooters, when you have them in this kind of build, I'll throw my shooters into combat. I had them at +2 attacks. I looked at a squad of Kurnoth Hunters. I'm like, man, I can probably take those. And I would shove them in and have them outfight Kurnoth Hunters because I'd throw 40 goblins with +2 attacks at you, and you would die to volume of dice. But the list is not consistent. So it'll get you places if you're able to manage your bubbles, to keep all your buffs up, to play your army, but you're a few dice rolls away from your army being like, oh, I didn't get my 5 up ward for 2 turns in a row on this squad of Stabbas. They're probably going to die between now and then, and now my left side of my battlefield is collapsed because I was relying on my Sneaky Snufflers to give out the ward to my units. But it's a very fun and different way to play than any of the other 2 lists. You are bringing mountains of trash, mountains of bodies, and you don't care what happens to them most of the time. And it's really fun.
And this is a perfect example of, I mentioned earlier, it's very easy to build a Gitz list with supporting tools. Because let's look at this for a second. Your highest damage and most of your damage is coming from the Squig Herd.
Mm-hmm.
Your Boing Grop Banners will do some damage. Your Stabbers will do some damage. Your Stabbers will do some. Your Shooters will do some damage. Obviously, if we get those buffs up, they'll do more damage than they have. But the reality is, it's the Squig Herd that is going to be doing the damage. You lose those Squig Herd, for example, it's an attrition game where you're just grinding down, trying to hold objectives as long as possible.
For sure.
So to say it's bad, but it's so easy to fill up your points with Sneaky Snufflers, Gobblepalooza, hero here. Like all of those heroes are support heroes. Loon Boss, support hero. Fungoid Cape Shaman, support hero. Squig Boss, support hero. None of them are
Snufflers, Spore Splatters, all support.
All supports, and which is not a bad thing, because you can, like we talked earlier about the Snuffle Award, they can be a screen as well as a support tool. You know, there's a whole bunch of things you can do, but you've got to be really careful of how you play it, and the value of the Stabbers and the Shooters really comes up, because otherwise, who holds the objectives? You got all these support, but nothing to support.
Right, for sure.
But I love it. Like this is madness. Like you put this on the table, and most people go, "What is this? What are you doing here?"
Hey, when a giant player walks up to you and they at the end of the game have lost 3 giants and they're not sure how, that means you've won the game.
I'm a giant player and I'd be like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, don't worry about it. I'm pushing 150 models at you and you will slowly fall over.
Yeah. And that's the fun thing, right? You can go crazy. Like, shit, you can do a whole bunch of fanatics now. Now that you don't need like battle line, like I'm half tempted to run an army of fanatics.
I like strike first. I like 50 fanatics. I'm listening. I'm not out.
Oh, it's so dumb. Like it's just a shame. Like my one gripe with Fanatics is you lost the little cheeky jank that you used to have where you could drop them out from a unit, and obviously you drop them outside of 9, but you could be within 3, and then like it was a 6-inch charge, and like use Hand of Gork to deliver them. It's a bit more of an honest game now, but it was always a risk even.
Playing fair Warhammer with goblins feels unfair. You would think they would play completely unfair Warhammer, and here they are following the rules.
Yeah, they don't do that very well. So obviously lots of different ways to build Gitz, which is absolutely fun. And there's like so many different ways. We could build all spiders. We could bring in some spiders. We could run a Kragnos list. We could run Dank Trogboss and, Scraggy, or with the Trug. Like there's so many great options. We could bring in the Mega Gargan, bring in Drog Fort Kicker, bring in our Regiment of Renown, like we talked about. The lack of shooting. Well, you could bring in the Crew Boys, or you could bring in, there's so much dimension, and you got enough point. Like your things are cheap enough that it's easy to shift and move things in and out. So one of the things I've always appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are the cruel shots? Is it
Grick's cruel shots? I think is you like a Beast Skewer Killbow and 2 packs of Bull Boys.
Man Skewer. Yeah, I don't mind that. I don't mind.
They're pointed well. No, do not hate them at all if you want that backboard shooting. I just tend to lean away from regiments because I like to stay in book. I've never been a fan of allies. While they're good, they can be good. I like to stay in my book, and I'll take my I'll take my big Gricks at home.
I'd like to say that I agree with you, but I'm also someone who converted up the Trogoth, the Slogoth.
Yes.
And I made a Gitz version of it. I converted the hell out of it. It's a Gitz version that I can't use now.
That should have been a Gitz model. Why did Crew Boys get it? That's a different problem.
Yeah, I feel like it's one head swap away, and it is a Gitz unit. Like, come on, man.
If you look at the ears, it's like the same ears as a Rocket Troll. Just saying.
Well, mine is a Rockgut Trogoth head, and I've made the top of it like the what do they call the
Hobgrots?
No, the chariot piece, like the whole thing. Like I've moon landed up. I've got mushrooms all over it. I can't think of what it's called. Anyway, carapace? No. Anyway, I've converted the hell out of it, and it's a crime. But I also converted. I made a Gordrak when you could ally Gordrak in, and I've got like a more Squig, and I've got old what's his name? It used to be the model now called Loon Boss with Giant Cave Squig, not on with. Remember the old anyway, I've converted the hell out of a bunch of Gitz. Still can't use that either. That'll teach me a lesson. All right. I've got some burning questions. I'm going to let you go. So you cool answer a few burning questions from Discord?
Yeah, bring it.
Cool. So Nerd Herd had asked, what do you think of destruction battle tactics? Any tips or go-tos for doing them, or do you generally just go for generic battle tactics and ignore the destruction ones?
So the only destruction battle tactic I've ever selected was you have a unit in combat with them, charge them with this unit and kill it. Because normally trolls will tend to be stuck in front, stuck in combat, and my Squig Herd aren't because they're positioning to charge, and then I'll charge my Squig Herd and blow up whatever unit is. Unfortunately, the other destruction tactic I just don't find very achievable, so I've just kind of put it to the side and said, that's nice, you exist. Anyways, we're going to focus on the good battle tactics. So I don't plan on doing the Cunning approach, which is the kill something in combat with you. I don't plan as that as part of my game plan, but I always look at it as a option to have. It's really hard to set up and be like, I'm going to plan to do this tactic. It's something that happens incidentally.
Yeah, I agree with you. Even when I very first started playing 4th edition, I was never a fan of destructions battle tactics. Like one of 2 is achievable. And I mean, they're both achievable, but they're not reliable. They're situational and have them up your sleeve, but they're never a part of like my turn 1 or turn 2 is going to do this. Or turn 4, I'm going to do this.
Yep, fully agree.
which is sad. Hopefully destruction or there's some tweaks, but yeah, they're the ones that I least like.
I would agree.
Do you have any recommendations from Sarah on how you would start maybe a Gitz army? Maybe a budget-friendly one.
The old start collecting gives you Squig Herd, some trolls, and like a loon boss. So if you're able to find any of those old start collecting boxes, those are a wonderful start. If you can get like 2 of those, maybe you look at the Vanguard because they can let you build like Shootas or Stabas or something in there, and you can use your extra loon boss and convert them to be a Squig boss. You do minimal conversions. You can find random Squig bits kind of anywhere. Squigs are they fall out of your pockets. They're everywhere. So you can kind of convert your own Squig boss. That's what I did. So you can kind of do a couple of the start collectings. And if you really want to lean heavily into Squigs, they have the old Christmas Battle Force boxes they did a few years ago that you could probably find somewhere and get a bunch of Squigs that way. But I think if you can find any old start collectings, that's probably the best way. They give you trolls, they give you Squig Herd, which are kind of the core of most lists nowadays.
Plus, give it like 3 months, and when Trogs finally get like a solid nerf, you'll see all those people who win all Trogs go, "Oh, now I'm going to sell some rock guts," and like, I'll take those off your hand, baby.
For sure, I love eBay.
Not that I want them to be nerfed, folks. I also have Trogs.
No, we want them to be shadow nerfed, so people think they're nerfed, but they're still fine. It's perfect. It's the perfect middle ground.
What we want is Moonclan and Spiders to get the big boosts, and they're OP.
I would disagree on Spiders for personal reasons. I don't want to see them on the table.
I live in Australia, and Spiders.
That's terrifying.
No, I'm like, I named them like, oh, there's little Timmy in the kitchen, and like, I'm totally cool with Spiders, man. I'm down.
Yeah, you can enjoy Spiders. I will play with my Stabas in the corner. I'm happy there.
All right. Agree to disagree. A good question that I didn't quite get to, like I kind of alluded to it, but we didn't quite get to this particular question. But I asked you earlier about the impacts of 4th edition and some of the rule changes. And somebody did ask a question around how you felt around Squigs and Moonclan now that there's no battle shock. And for me, always having a CP for inspiring presence in the old days was important. Do you think that changes a little bit of the value? And I think partially your answer is going to be about the fact that the sub-faction for Moonclan is just hot garbage or not very good, and that's stopping us. Like, if that was good, I reckon we see a lot of Moonclan. If that was a good sub-faction, I reckon we see lots of bodies on the board.
So I would say no for a different reason.
Okay.
Goblins never took Battle Shock in 3rd edition either. You always pocketed a command point. Scragrat was giving you 2 free command points a turn. Like, he's getting command point in either turn. You always had the command points for it. So the command point resource was plentiful in Gitz because you were getting 2 from Scragrat. You were getting 1 from the Fungoid Cave Shaman if you were taking him. And you were just auto-passing it all of the time. Because I played 80 Stabas. And I'm like, cool. I've never had to Battle Shock either of these units if I didn't want to.
I had to rely on the Triumph to get me out of some situations where I needed multiple inspiring presence to be able to get myself out of that danger. Or with Squigs, where Squigs couldn't receive commands, Squig Herd.
Yep.
So the Triumph combination was required. Yeah, I hear you. But do you think that not having Battle Shock has improved either of them?
It's made them better, but like marginally. It's like going from, if this unit was made in like 40% of lists, it's like now 45. It's not like a major increase because it was never really a problem in 3rd edition. Battle Shock just never really existed. So taking it from a problem that didn't really exist, but you didn't spam it because it could, to now where they don't suffer at all is better for them. I think they need a little bit more War Scroll help than they do, or sub-faction help even. To get them to where they need to be. I think just Hordes of Bodies is good. They just need something else. Like, I can give them my Rube Goldberg machine of buffs, but at the end of the day, it still doesn't quite meet the bar that we're currently playing at. So if that's my sub-faction saying I'm getting +1 to hit, +1 to wound, any sort of buff, where they are now more efficient at what they're supposed to be doing. If I could get crit auto wound, I'm in.
I mean, I'd love crit auto wound. The volume with all the pluses to attack, like the volume.
Right. But if you gave them crit auto wound in that subfaction, if they're, let's say, around a Moon Clan hero, and you gave them crit auto wound, do you not start thinking about Moon Clan lists?
Yeah, the question is like, what do Moon Clan do? And like, if you think about like wound density and they clog up the board, like, okay, great, I can do that with Troggoths.
Yep.
And like, okay, right. Well, what makes them unique? Well, there's more bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the only thing that is that the only thing they kind of do?
Yeah.
Like kind of like Trogs do more damage.
Mm-hmm.
Trogs don't have as many synergies, but again, I said we're polishing up a turd. So if you just want to flood the board with bodies, you can do that. Like just have as many stabbers and shooters as you can. Have a couple of units of snufflers to be able to chuck out a bunch of wards. Have a couple of loon bosses there to help with the regeneration. But other than that, it's just pure like old zombies without the damage, without the mortal damage.
Yeah.
Last question. Actually, I'm going to answer this question because I don't think you're going to answer. Someone asked, hey, say something good about spiders, pretty please. Here's what I'm going to say. Please update the spider riders. Please do something. Do something with them or cut them. It's been many editions now where they just haven't gotten any love. The old web spinner shaman on the little spider, like just do something with them. Like this is what I want. Update them or cut them and give me more Git mob.
Yes.
Give me more Git mob. Give me a Doom Diver. Give me some other things.
Give me heavy goblin infantry.
So the thing I loved about Git mob is they were like the old fantasy battle Git mob is they had all this wild and wacky stuff. You had the Doom Diver, obviously some artillery that we have no long range shooting in Gits.
Mm-hmm.
You had, was it the Snotling pump wagon? Again, a little chariot of Snotlings that you could just bring forward, like this little like rickshaw cart, like just full of Snotlings. There was all these weird and wacky inventions that I would love to see in Gits.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like you've got these spiders you're not investing in. You've got this Git mob that I can't do a lot with.
Make it happen.
Focus your attention.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I ask. That's my ask is that we do something with them when the battle tome comes. You can tell me what do you want to see when the battle tome comes? What is being added to the faction?
If they're adding to the factions,
whatever you can answer, whatever you want.
I want stabbers to be the perfect unit in every way. I want them to be not a cute choice. I want them to be a legitimate consideration for the book. I want them to be played by multiple people.
All right, well, I'll be the first to lead the charge with you.
Heck yeah.
As a man of 200 stabbers, 20 fanatics. Yeah. What are you adding to the book? What are you going to add? Like, new unit. Let's go.
I mean, I think that heavily armored goblins would be nice. Like, that would be my kind of unit. You give us some, like, goblin. It's like you have, like, all these, like, squishy guys. Give me a heavy armored goblin unit, 4-up save. Not, like, 3. We're not crazy. We're going to give them a 4-up save. And make these dudes walk up with giant, like flails. Or axes or halberds or something that is just falling out of them. Like, they're giant leather-plated goblins walking up, and they're, like, juiced up on shrooms, high as a kite, but they're not, like, insane. They're controlled. It'd be a wonderful unit for me.
I'm going War Machines. I
wouldn't say no.
I've got like I don't know if you know this this model. It's the old
is it the Squig Gobber?
Yes, Squig Gobber. That's it. The Squig Gobber. I've got a Squig Gobber. Like, it was an artillery piece that shot like squigs at people.
Yeah.
A colossal squig. Like, give me artillery. Give me some, like, I look at the ogres with their scrap launcher. Give that to us. You don't use ogres. You don't use it. Give it to us.
I would
Let
accept
us have them. Give
I
us
would accept
give us some like weird artillery that is highly inaccurate. But if it hits, it's absolute gold. It's like the fanatics of artillery. If it hits, it's crazy. If it misses, it's probably gonna blow up.
Hitting on 5s, 2d6 damage. That's my kind of gun.
Done. And make it a random, I don't know, pick a point in the battlefield, or like old school, like, catapult.
Oh, we're going to like fantasy before I existed. Oh my goodness.
Whatever. Scatter die. That's how willing I am to get into other artillery piece. Give me some scatter dice. Give me like a point in the battlefield. Then it moves X. Like whatever.
Oh no. Your kit will now come with additional dice, so you know how to use your model.
Well, Games Workshop can sell extra dice, and that will make us profitable. Michael, this has been awesome. We could talk forever, and I think we've come up with some crazy ideas. Any shout outs, or if people wanted to chat to you, where can they find you other than kicking ass on the tournament scene?
I'm on Twitter a little bit at SwaggyShadow21. I made a poor choice in middle school, and I stuck with it. And then I got friends in High Ground Gaming. They make battle reports every once in a while, except Sean had a kid recently, so congrats to him.
Congrats. Very rude, very inconsiderate.
Yeah, I know. He had to slow it down, but they're still doing stuff over there. They host events. So if you're ever in the Michigan area, check them out because they do really cool stuff.
Very, very cool. And I'm gonna see you at Adepticon.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'll be there. I'm waiting.
That'd be very cool. No late game challenges like Madigan did at LVO.
Oh, I'll play you in. I'll grudge you round 1. How about that?
Do you guys do grudges?
I don't know. I can ask Nick though.
I know LVO definitely doesn't. I don't know.
I mean, they probably don't, but I know Nick. I can ask him.
Yeah. Last time I went to Adepticon was under Alex Gonzalez, so it's definitely change of management. So
yes. Nick runs it really well. I really like how Nick runs it.
I've met Nick a few times. Absolute gentleman, legend. Really appreciate my time with Nick. So I'm very curious. But Michael, you are a champion. Let me know in the comment section how you're feeling and how you're finding Gitz. I really like them. Trog's obviously great. Squigs are great. Spiders, I think, are great. Michael, less so. Models. And I think we both agree in a very non-political way, make Grots great again. Yes. Let's make the Moon Clan Stabbers great again. And that is about them, not about anything else.
This is all about Grots, nothing else.
Oh, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm an Australian.
War dollies. We like war dollies.
I'm Australian. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to go back to my bathroom with my spiders and go have a chat with them.
Yeah.
Michael, I'm going to have a chat. Like, hey, what are you guys up to? I've been away for 2.5 hours. Have a fly. All right. See you, folks. Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you pressed like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AoS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a 1-1 on a spellcast.